Hey guys, welcome back to Pocket Saga, as you seen in title and thumbnail. In this video we are going to see, what if Ash try Kanto again after Unova? This is part 1, and story is new so I will slowly updates parts as author update more. For more comment down your thoughts and like share, also don't forget to check out author of this story named, Flight to Destiny by Inferno 02. All details in description. Ash Ketchum, a teenage Pokemon trainer who has traveled through the Kanto, Johto, Hoenn, Sinnoh and Unova region has been living in his hometown Pallet Town in the Kanto region for a year now. Since his adventures in the Unova region he caught several Pokemon in that region during his travels. Ash had decided to take a break from journeying for a while, to spend more time with his family back in Kanto, and for the past year it had been nice. Usually Ash would simply learn of a new region in the world and decide to travel there, but not this time, don't ask me why. While Ash enjoyed spending time with his family in Pallet Town, he has other relatives besides his mother there. He missed challenging gym leaders and going against the Pokemon leagues. Even though he never won, but he forgot he could always try again another year, but for some reason Ash has never bothered to have done this. One day Ash was at Professor Oak's lab watching his herd of over 30 Tauros which he caught in his first journey in the Kanto region in the Safari Zone, running through the fields of the research lab, when suddenly it hit him in his mind of what he could next. Ash then realizes what he can do, and that is to try it again. Ash then goes over to his house, tells Delia all about what he plans to do, which to once again travel through the Kanto region, collect Gym Ba DGES and challenge the Indigo Plateau, and hopefully this time win it. At least you were here longer than you usually are when you leave, dear, Delia says. After hearing that, you'll have a better chance of winning the Indigo Plateau since your Pokemon have gotten stronger, Professor Oak says. Also hearing this, he decided to bring his Unova region Pokédex with him, which had data on over 649 Pokemon from all 5 regions, along with several supplies he might need during his journey. And after saying goodbye to his mother, Ash and Pikachu were off. Ash and Pikachu soon got to the exit of Pallet 2. WN, and just before they entered Viridian Forest the two hear a rustling in the bushes and an Eevee pops out. Eevee, the evolution Pokemon, says, and Ash is amazed by this and pulls out his Pokédex. Eevee, the evolution Pokemon. Because its genetic makeup is irregular, it quickly changes its form due to a variety of causes. Whoa, that's awesome, Ash says and pulls out a Pokeball and throws it in. His Gible is unleashed from his Pokeball. Gible, he exclaims, Gible use Dragon Pulse, Ash says, and Gible opens its mouth and a turquoise ball of energy appears in front of it. It then fires the ball at Eevee, which knocks the evolution Pokemon out in one hit. Now go Pokeball, Ash says, and throws an empty Pokeball at Eevee, which absorbs the evolution Pokemon and wobbles and blinks several times and then halts, and sparkles fly off, confirming its capture. Yeah, I caught an Eevee, Ash says, holding up the Pokeball. Pika Pie, Pikachu says, and the ball then teleports away right in Ash's hand. Oh yeah, teleports to Professor Oak's lab. If I have more than 6 Pokemon on my team, Ash says, and Ash notices Team Rocket is following him due to seeing a shadow behind him in the shape of a Meowth, which is their balloon. Ash and Team Rocket have had this boring routine for the past 6 years where they would continuously try and steal Pikachu, fail every time, and he was just sick of it. I know you're there, Team Rocket. I can see the balloon's shadow, Ash yells out, and just before they could do their motto, which got old years ago, Ash turned and so did Pikachu and Gible. Pikachu use Electro Ball on the balloon's carriage, Ash says, and Pikachu unleashes a ball of electricity at the carriage of the hot air balloon carrying the trio of Pokemon thieves that has been causing the two friends trouble for the last 6 years. The Electro Ball hits the carriage, causing the trio of thieves to fall down and hit the ground, but they quickly pick themselves up, looking very peeved. The long-haired Jessie spoke first. Oh you twerp, now you're gonna get it, she says, very angry, and opens her Pokeball, and in an instant her Yanmega is unleashed from her Pokeball. Yanmega use ancient power, she says, and the Ogre Darner Pokemon begins to generate a sphere of energy. Gible use Draco Meteor, Ash says. The Land Shark Pokemon fires the attack at Yanmega before she could fire ancient power, making her faint, and Gible then stands and roars in victory. Then he begins to glow and grow, and Ash looks amazement as his Gible evolves. Finally the light stops and Gible has become a Gabite. Ash then pulls out his Pokédex. Gabite, the cave Pokemon, the evolved form of Gible. It loves sparkly things. It seeks treasures in caves and hoards the loot into its nest. Ash then unleashes his other Pokémon, which are Bayleaf, Totodile, Emboar and Quilava, and they all stare down on Team Rocket and they cover their heads cowering in fear. Ash then takes out his phone and dials 911. Several moments later, Officer Jenny and at least 2 other cops arrives and cuffs the entire trio, places them under arrest. Don't worry, they won't be bothering you anymore with all they did, they'll be put away for life. Officer Jenny says, and after giving Jenny his statement leaves and with his Pikachu goes into Viridian Forest. Ash had just exited Viridian City and he along with Pikachu prepared to enter Viridian Forest, but before he did he briefly stopped at the entrance and the both of them took a moment to remember coming to this forest over 6 years ago where Ash had captured his Caterpie and Pidgeotto, and during the short time in the forest Caterpie evolved into Metapod, then its final evolution Butterfree. Pidgeotto evolved into Pidgeot here 5 years ago to fight off a Fearow who at the beginning of Ash's journey was a Spearow that Ash attempted to capture but failed to do so. When Ash had returned to Viridian Forest after he had traveled across the Kanto region for the first time, it was shown it evolved and it had also became the leader of a flock of Spearows who were terrorizing a Pidgey flock in the forest. Pidgeot had stayed here after he evolved from Pidgeotto to protect the Pidgeys from the flock. Ash had promised to return to him after he was done traveling through the Orange Islands, but he hadn't kept his promise. Better late than never, and maybe he could find new Pokémon in the forest. Ready, Pikachu? Ash asked and Pikachu nodded with an eager look on his face. Pika, the Pokémon trainer and his best friend then ran straight through the entrance and into Viridian Forest, and once inside Ash heard something in the distance and he looked up into a tree and he spotted a wild Kricketot on top of one of the tree's branches. Whoa, it's a Kricketot, Ash said quietly and then he pulled out his Pokédex. Kricketot, the cricket Pokémon. When its antennae hit each other, it sounds like the music of a xylophone. Alright, Pikachu, use thunder on that Kricketot, Ash said and Pikachu fired a beam of electricity at the cricket Pokémon who turned around and was hit by the electric type attack and it fainted instantly, and then Ash threw a Pokeball at the cricket Pokémon which it then orbed right into itself and it blinked and wobbled several times and halted, which confirmed its capture, and in a flash of light it was teleported to Professor Oak's lab for storage. Suddenly Ash's Pokegear rings. Suddenly several Spearows surrounded Ash and Pikachu, and what comes down from the sky is the Fearow that lead the flock whom Ash recognized as the Spearow he attempted to capture the day he started his journey. Pikachu, this is really bad, Ash said. Pika, Pie. Before Fearow could even attack Ash and Pikachu, a Twister attack appeared and it swirled up all of the Spearow and their leader Fearow and dropped them onto the ground, all of them unconscious. Ash, who saw an opportunity in this, pulled out an empty Pokeball from his pocket and threw it on the unconscious Fearow that he attempted to capture on the day he started his adventures 6 years ago. The Pokeball then wobbled and blinked several times and then halted, which confirmed its capture, and it teleported away to Professor Oak's lab for storage. Yes, Ash said, as he felt great for the capture of that Fearow. Ash then looked up in both surprise and amazement to see his released Pidgeot, who was up in the air waving its wings. At the Team Rocket headquarters, Giovanni, the Team Rocket leader, sits at his desk petting his Persian. Then his secretary comes in and says, "Sir, we have problem." Giovanni then turns to her. "What kind of problem?" Asking, "It involves the agents you sent to Unova, sir. They've been arrested." He slams his hand on the desk, which even frightens his Persian. "How did this happen?" he asks with a stern voice. "Our agents confirm it was because the Pokémon trainer Ash Ketchum." She presents a picture of the young hero that was no doubt taken during his travels in Unova, the Pikachu who they've been after for 6 years is one of his Pokémon. After he defeated them, he called the authorities. After they were arrested, he went into Viridian Forest, she explains to her boss. The Team Rocket leader smiles and says, "Tell Ariana to wait for him in Pewter City." She bows and says, "Right away, sir." The secretary leaves and thinks to himself, she will be more than a match for the boy, knowing Ariana can deal with him better than his other agents can. Back in Viridian Forest, Ash hugs his old friend Pidgeot and says, "I'm sorry I'm late, old buddy, but now I'm here." Pidgeot then responds by yelling, "Pidgeot." Ash then pulls out an empty Pokeball. So now that Fearow's captured the Spearow won't pick on other Pokémon, so you could Before Ash could finish, Pidgeot taps the Pokeball with its beak and goes inside, which blinks several times confirming the recapture, and teleports off to Professor Oak's lab. Good to have you back, buddy, Ash says now that he has Pidgeot back after so many years. Asha. ND Pikachu continue on in the Viridian Forest. Suddenly he spots a shiny Ledian and quickly ducks and pulls out his Pokédex. Ledian, the 5-star Pokémon in the evolved form of Lediba when the stars flicker in the night sky. It flutters about, scattering a glowing powder. He looks in amazement to see a shiny Pokémon. He has seen several of them over the years. He even has one, his Noctowl. Pikachu, you say Thunder Wave, he says to Pikachu quietly, who then sends off a charge of electricity at Ledian, which takes it by surprise and paralyzes it and falls down on the ground. Ash then throws a Pokeball at it while it is on the ground paralyzed, and it wobbles and blinks several and then halts, confirming its capture, and teleports away to Professor Oak's lab. That was a stroke of pure luck, him and Pikachu continue on. Before night falls they decide to set up camp near a nice spot in the forest. Quilava lights a fire using flamethrower, then the Pokémon begins eating the berries they found in the forest. Ash then calls Professor Oak on his Pokegear, and Professor Oak, who is the first one to speak, says, Ash, so far in just one day you have able to capture 4 Pokémon and recovered your Pidgeot. Ash then says, I know, Professor, not to mention Gible evolved into Gabite and caught another shiny Pokémon. You're doing great so far, Ash, keep up the good work, the Pokémon professor says, who then GS up, and Ash looks up at the stars thinking of what is next to come. Ash woke up to the sounds of his Pokegear ringing and sees Professor Oak on the screen. Professor, what is it? Ash asks, I just NTED to tell you something. You see, Bulbasaur was fighting off a group of Primeaps who were terrorizing your Eevee and Ledian. He lost control when he suddenly, well, take a look for yourself. He steps aside to show Ash the Bulbasaur he has had for 6 years, who chose not to evolve, is now an Ivysaur with a dishonored face. Whoa, Ivysaur, he then pulls out his Pokédex. Ivysaur, the seed Pokémon in the evolved form of Bulbasaur. Exposure to sunlight adds to its strength. Sunlight also makes the bud on its back grow larger. He also learned the attack Sleep Powder, which instantly put those prime apes to sleep, and we were able to move them, Oak says. Ivysaur signs in dishonor in front of his trainer. It's okay, buddy, there's nothing to be ashamed about, Ash says. But to him there is. He want to prove he can be powerful without evolving, but now he can't, Professor Oak adds. Ash smiles, now Ivysaur, you did prove it for a long time. Ivysaur smiles with content, knowing his trainer is happy to him in his evolved form. I might need some of my water and grass Pokémon for the gym battle against Forest. I might need you, Ivysaur, Ash says to the professor. Ivysaur nods with content. Ivysaur, I'll call you back once I'm at the Pokémon Center in Pewter, Professor. Professor Oak hangs on him and he packs his things. Then him and his Pikachu continue on and finally exit Viridian Forest and just look in awe at the site of Pewter City, the site where Ash first met Brock and got his first badge. Okay, buddy, let's go. Ash was about to run off to Pewter City when suddenly a female voice saw I wouldn't run so fast. He turns to see a red-haired woman with a white dress with a red R on it. You're from Team Rocket, Pika. That's right, name's Ariana. I'm an executive and our boss is not happy for what you did to those 3 agents. They've been causing me and Pikachu trouble for too long. Maybe, but for that we're going to make your life a living hell. She pulls out a Pokeball and throws it in the air. Honchkrow come out. She throws the ball and a Honchkrow comes out, and Ash pulls out his Pokédex. Bad choice, Pikachu. Thunderbolt. Pikachu unleashes the attack and Ariana spoke. Honchkrow protect. The big boss Pokémon projects a green force field around it, shielding itself from the Thunderbolt. Use Dark Pulse. Honchkrow unleashes a stream of purple and black lines which collides with Pikachu, knocking him out. Then Ash throws 5 other Pokeballs out, unleashing his other Pokémon. Gabite Draco Meter. Gabite does as Ash says and unleashes a ball of energy that collides with Honchkrow, knocking the big boss Pokémon unconscious. Ariana then withdraws Honchkrow with a smile on her face and pulls out another and says with content, Vileplume come out. Ash then says, Quilava use Flamethrower. The volcano Pokémon unleashes a beam of ultra-hot fire which collides with Vileplume but is not completely defeated. Use Sleep Powder. Vileplume obeys her mistress and unleash SA purple powder which puts all of Ash's Pokemon to sleep except Totodile who dodged at the last second. Well, looks like you're outmatched. Everyone knows a water type is weak against grass types, Toted. Eel then raises his arms and begins to glow and Ash and Ariana watches in amazement as Totodile begins to evolve. Then he grows a fin at the top of his head and begins to grow in size. Then process ends. And Totodile shows his new form as a Croconaw and yells, Croconaw. And Ash pulls out his Pokédex. Croconaw, the big jaw Pokemon and the evolved form of Totodile. If it loses a fang, a new one grows back in its place. There are always 48 fangs lining its mouth. This still won't save you. Vileplume use Razor Leaf. Vileplume sends off a wave of leaves but then Croconaw unleashes a white-blue bee. Freezing the leaves. Whoa, Ice Beam. Ash says in amazement after that Croconaw unleashes another ice beam freezing Vileplume in a block of ice. Ariana with an angry face throws another Pokeball and an Arbok comes out, use Acid Spray. But before Arbok could a male voice spoke, Swampert use Ancient Power. Suddenly a ball of energy hits Arbok knocking it out and Ariana withdraws the Pokemon and quickly runs off in defeat. Ash turns around to see the Swampert who saved him and his owner was none other than his old traveling friend Brock. Good to see you, Ash, Brock said as he ran down the hill. Meet his longtime friend with his Swampert following behind him. Whoa, Marshtomp evolved, he pulls out his Pokédex. Swampert, the mudfish Pokemon and the evolved form of Marshtomp, its arms are as hard as rock. With one swing it can break a boulder into pieces. Yeah, after I came back from Sinnoh and I started training to be a Pokemon doctor and Marshtomp evolved, but enough about me, what have you been doing? Brock asks, curious what his old friend has been doing since Brock went to become a Pokemon doctor. I went to the Unova region and caught a bunch of new Pokemon like Emboar right here. Ash says and he turns and shows him Emboar who is currently asleep along with Gabite, Bayleaf, Quilava and Pikachu from the sleep powder attack from Ariana's Vileplume and Ash just looks at Brock with an embarrassed look. We better get to a Pokemon Center, Brock says and then Ash then returned all his Pokemon to their Pokeballs and picked up Pikachu and brings them to the nearest Pokemon Center. Once there Ash and Brock sit down and talk about their adventures after Sinnoh. So you're retrying the Kanto League? Brock asks after Ash explains what has happened to him so far. Yeah, I want to see if I can win this time with all I've learned over the years, Ash explains. Suddenly a Blissey comes in signaling to Brock and Ash looks in surprise, is that Chansey? Ash asks, sure, is she evil? Vet about 5 months ago, Ash immediately pulls out his Pokédex. Blissey, the happiness Pokemon and the evolved form of Chansey. It has a very compassionate heart. If it sees a sick Pokemon, it will nurse the sufferer back to health. Blissey helps me with the Pokemon here at the center and she's telling me there's a patient gotta go. Ash smiles knowing his friend is living his dream and gets up to talk to Professor Oak about his newly evolved Croconaw and Ariana's attack. So then Totodile evolved into Croconaw and learned Ice Beam. Ash tells the Pokemon professor, that's excellent, Oak says. Officer Jenny then comes in with a file, Mr. Ketchum, I just got a hit on this Ariana from your description. She puts the file on the table and opens it showing a mug shot of the woman who attacked her. She's got a record, Ash says. Yes, Ariana Netcom was caught attempting to steal a trainer's Squirtle egg in Vermilion City. She's sentenced to 5 years paroled 2 years early on good behavior. Roll officer said he hasn't seen her for a year. She was probably doing that for Team Rocket. Ash exclaims, we didn't even realize there was any connection to Team Rocket until now, I'll look into it. Brock comes out with Blissey and Toxicroak. Oh officer, is there a problem? Brock asks, no, I'm just investigating a crime that occurred. The area doctor, she replies. Yeah, someone from Ash Street. Ops and notices Toxicroak. Whoa, Krogunk evolved too. He pulls out his Pokédex. Toxicroak, the toxic mouth Pokemon and the evolved Krogunk. It has a poison sac on its throat. When it croaks, the stored poison is churned for more potency. Yeah, to be honest, the way he was like with Saturn's Toxicroak, I thought he would never want to evolve like Bulbasaur, but I guess I was wrong, Brock says when Officer Jenny exits through the door and turns to Ash and says, I'll tell you if anything turns, until then watch your step. She exits through the door. Whoa Brock, you didn't flirt with her, Ash says amazed. Brock didn't try anything with her. Yeah, I've learned to control myself mainly because of Toxicroak's claws. he says and turns to Toxicroak, who gives him a very intimidating look while going, Toxicroak. Also about Bulbasaur, he evolved into Ivysaur by accident when he was defending the Eevee and Ledian I caught yesterday from some Primeaps. Ash explains to his old friend, that's unexpected, bro. CK says, remembering Bulbasaur's goal of not evolving. Suddenly a female voice speaks up, thanks Brock for healing my Pokemon. Ash hears a voice, wait, that voice, it's suddenly Dawn, the girl he trav. Eld through the Sinnoh region with, walks in and looks in amazement and exclaims, Ash. Dawn, what are you doing in Kanto? For the Pokemon contests, of course, I just got back from Hoenn. Really, did you win the Grand Festival? Dawn looks with an embarrassed face, no, but I came in top 4. I'm retrying the Pokemon leagues. Brock joins in, the first gym leader is my younger brother Forrest, then La. T's go them. Ash stops her from leaving when he says, but first I need to change my Pokemon team. Dawn gives another embarrassed look, oh sorry. Ash then switches around his Pokemon team with Profs. Sorokin then leaves the center and enters a park and exclaims, come on out. He throws up all 5 Pokeballs, letting out Weasel, Quilava, Ledian and Ivysaur. Dawn spots the shiny Ledian and is amazed, whoa, a shiny Ledian. Ledian flies around excitedly, Dawn, let's see your Pokemon. Dawn pulls out all 6. Come on out. She throws them up in Mamoswine, Lopunny, Togekiss, Piplup, Clefable and Quilava. Whoa, Cyndaquil and Baniri evolved. Ash says, when I came back to Twinleaf we were fighting a swarm of Ariados when he evolved and fought them off then in Hoenn. Me and Baniri were so close. Hat she evolved. Clefable waves her hands, Clefable. Dawn realizes Clefable wants her to tell how she found her. Oh, and I found Clefable as is a Cleffa, then we grew close and she evolved, then we found Da Moonstone and she evolved into Clefable. Dawn, I'm glad you tried the Hoenn region, and if you try your best you can win the Grand Festival here. Dawn smiles knowing how supportive Ash is. Now let's go, it's time, Ash says and walks towards the gym and opens the door and says, Forrest, I'm here to challenge you. The lights all turn on and Forrest is seen on the other side. Well, Ash, long time no see. Brock already told me you're retrying the Indigo Plateau. That's right, and this time I'm winning. Brock and Dawn go into the audience seat along with Flint, Lola and Brock's 8 other siblings, who are older than Ash, remembered mainly cause it's been a couple years since he came to the gym. Just as he was gonna continue thinking, the referee speaks up. The gym battle between Forrest, the gym leader, and Ash, the challenger, will now begin. It will be a 4-on-4 battle and will be over when all 4 on either side are unable to battle, and furthermore only the challenger will be allowed to make substitution in Pokemon. Begin. Golem, I choose you. He throws a Pokeball and the Megaton Pokemon comes out. That must be Geodude, Ash says as Dawn pulls out her Pokédex. Golem, the Megaton Pokemon in the evolved form of Graveler, it is capable of blowing itself up. It uses this explosive force to jump from mountain to mountain. Quote, okay Weasel, I choose you. He throws a Pokeball and the Sea Weasel Pokemon comes out and says, Weasel. Flint watches the battle and says to Brock, Ash's improving son, he thought of the Pokemon Forest has and brought Pokemon with type advantages, IKN. Ow dad, let's see if it's enough to beat Forest. Weasel use Water Pulse. Weasel then puts his hands together and forms a blue ball of water and unleashes on Golem, which pushes him across the field. But does not make him faint but does some damage. Golem use Dig. Golem then digs himself underground and Weasel looks around and suddenly Golem comes up and knocks him out and he faints. Weasel is unable to battle. The winner is Golem. Ash returns Weasel to his Pokeball. Good job buddy, and pulls out another. Ledian, I choose you. He throws the Pokeball and Ledian comes out with a line of sparkles around him. A shiny Ledian, amazing, Flint says. Ledian use Swift. Ash exclaims. Ledian then unleashes an array of stars which collide with Golem and he faints instantly, and everyone in the gym, except Ash, looks in surprise. A critical hit, Brock says, amazed at Ledian's power. Golem return. He withdraws his Golem and pulls out another Pokeball. Go Steelix. He throws the Pokeball in an instant the Iron Snake Pokemon emerges and Ash pulls out his Pokédex. Steelix, the Iron Snake Pokemon in the evolved form of Onix. It is said that if an Onix lives for 100 years, its Compo C. Tion becomes diamond-like as it evolves into Onix. A Steel-type Ledian return. He withdraws Ledian. Quilava, I choose you. Ash yells and throws out a poke ball and Quilava comes out, Quilava. 4. Est smiled even though he knew a steel type like Steelix was at a disadvantage to a fire type like Quilava he still looked confident. Steelix use Sandstorm. Steelix does his forest commands and unleash. He's a large amount of sand on Quilava and is thrown across but not defeated. Quilava use Eruption. Quilava charges up fire and runs under Steelix and unleashes the fire type attack that throws the iron snake Pokemon in the air, now Flamethrower. Quilava obeys and sprays fire at Steelix adding to the damage and soon hits the ground and faints. Steelix is unable to battle the winner as Quilava. 4. Rest then smiles, impressive Ash but my next one is tough Rhyperior go. He throws a Pokeball and in an instance the drill Pokemon comes out, a Rhyperior. Ash says, Rhyperior use Rock Wrecker. Rhyperi. Or obeys and unleashes the attack on Quilava damaging the Volcano Pokemon but is still able to battle. Quilava return. Ash withdraws Quilava. Ash thinks of his next choice Pikachu can't go because Electric type moves can't work on a rock and ground type like Rhyperior so he thought of the perfect one. Ivysaur I choose you. Ash throws his Pokeball and Ivysaur comes out. Ivysaur, use Razor Leaf. He does as Ash commands and unleashes an array of leaves which several damages Rhyperior leaving him exhausted. Now use Vine Whip. Ivysaur does this and Rhyperior falls down fainted. Rhyperior is unable to battle Ivysaur as the winner. Flint pulls out his last Pokeball. This one you can't beat Ash. He throws a Pokeball and the Pokemon who emerges a Ramfardos. A Ramfardos, Ash says and Forest replies, I revived it as Cranidos from a skull fossil now use Earthquake. Ramfardos uses the attack and shakes up the whole ground which causes a large amount of dust and when it fades Ivysaur is fainted. Ivysaur is unable to battle the winner as Ramfardos. Ash returns Ivysaur to his Pokeball and thinks of what could be a good Pokemon to use. Ledian I choose you. He throws the Pokeball and the yellow-orange Pokemon emerges. So Ash brought Ledian out because ground-type attacks have no effect. Ramfardos use Hyper Beam. Ramfardos charges up a beam and unleashes it but Ledian dodges the attack. Ledian use Sunny Day. Ledian's arms glow and unleashes a beam at the open roof above the gym making the sunlight strong. Flint thinks, what is Ash planning? Use Solar Beam. Ledian unleashes a beam of yellow-white energy on Ramfardos which was so powerful it made him fly onto the other side of the gym and attempts to pick itself up but faints. Ramfardos is unable to TTLE the winner is Ledian the victor is Ash from Pallet Town. Ash smiles and yells, yes. Flint smiles and withdraws, you did good get some rest buddy. Soon afterwards they all gathered outside the gym where Forest presented the Iron Badge to Ash. Here you go Ash the Iron Badge and this time you won it in battle. Ash picks it up and holds it up, yes. Brock spoke, well Ash now it's off to Saru. Lean City that means Misty. Dawn comes in, I'm think'll tag along with you just like old times. Alright Dawn I'm cool with that. Brock and his family wave goodbye to the two as they walk out into the Kanto region to compete in contests and challenge gym leaders not knowing what amazing adventures are to come. Ash and Dawn have just entered Route 3 and have exited Pewter City, so Ash who is Misty exactly? Dawn asks, Misty is the Cerulean City gym leader we traveled together through Kanto with Brock through the Kanto and Johto after that she went back to the Cerulean gym, Ash replies. So what type of Pokemon does she use? Dawn asks, water so I'll use Pokemon like Sceptile or Torterra to fight her, Ash says excitedly. Ash I hear there's a place called MT Moon coming up what kind of Pokemon are there? Dawn asks and Ash replies with a smile, Clefairy are common here this will be my third time coming here it's a nice place. Dawn notices the sun is going down and says, Ash it's getting late we should probably set up camp. Ash then checks his Pokegear and notices it's about 7:32 at night. You're right Dawn there's a good spot. Ash and Dawn run towards a nice looking spot on the mound. Toyn that looked perfectly stable so they set up camp there. Dawn's Quilava lights the campfire using flame wheel at a low frequency and Ash begins mixing the soup. I didn't know you could cook, Dawn says noticing Ash is making them soup. I learned how to do this from my mom when I came back from Unova. What kind of Pokemon are there? Ash pulls out a Pokeball. I'll show you go Scrafty. He rows the Pokeball in the air and the hoodlum Pokemon comes out in a flash, Scrafty. Dawn looks in amazement. Whoa, I've heard of these. She then pulls out her own national Pokédex she recently acquired. Scrafty, the hoodlum Pokémon in the evolved form of Scraggy. Groups of them beat up anything that enter their territory. Each can spit acidic liquid from its mouth. I caught Scrafty after he hatched from an egg as a Scraggy. Scrafty then turns around and notices a Gulpin sneaking around and yells while tugging Ash's shirt, "Scrafty." They then turn to see a Gulpin who is slithering away and Ash pulls out his Pokédex. Gulpin, the stomach Pokémon. Almost all of its body is its stomach. Its harsh digestive juices quickly dissolve anything it swallows. Scrafty use high jump kick. Scrafty jumps up and prepares to use the attack when Gulpin shoots a bubble from its mouth which hits Scrafty, causing it to fall asleep and hit himself. Gulpin used yawn. Dawn yells. Ash then smiles at her and throws a Pokeball in the air. "Heracross, I choose you." The Pokeball unleashes the single-horn Pokémon. Gulpin once again uses yawn, which puts Heracross to sleep. Heracross sleep talk. Heracross hears Ash in his sleep and uses Focus Punch, knocking Gulpin out cold. Ash then pulls out an Pokeball and throws it at the unconscious Pokémon while quickly absorbs it and wobbles and blinks 3T. Knees and stops, confirming its capture, and Ash picks it up and yells, "I caught a Gulpin." He then lets Gulpin out of his Pokeball and scans it with his Pokédex. Gulpin's moves are yawn, acid spray, pound and toxic. "Whoa, those are good," Ash says. He then throws up the last of his Pokeballs, which unleashes Eevee and Gabite, and Dawn looks at Eevee with amazement. "Whoa, Gibble evolved and you caught an Eevee, it's so cute." She then proceeds to pet Eevee, which Eevee greatly enjoys. "I caught him outside Viridian Forest. I need to ask you, has Team Rocket caused you any trouble?" Ash smiles. "Let me show you something." He pulls out his laptop, opens it up and turns it on. "What are you showing me?" "This." He turns the laptop to her direction, which shows a news website with an article that has Team Rocket's mug shots under the headline, "Team Rocket Convicted." Dawn, with a surprised look, reads the article. The agents of the mysterious organization known as Team Rocket were arrested on June 10 AF. Terra's 6-year reign. The person who made the call was Pokemon trainer Ash Ketchum. She turns to Ash. "I couldn't take it anymore." The timer goes off and Dawn says, "Soup's on." Ash and Dawn then go over to the soup tin, which is bubbling and has a delicious smelling aroma. Ash and Dawn both grab bowls and fill them with soup and begin eating them, and after one taste Dawn says, "This is amazing, what's in it?" "It's a mix of homemade chicken noodle with some celery and red pepper for added taste." Dawn continues eating and enjoys the taste while the Pokemon enjoy the Pokemon food. Ash, "How many Pokemon did you catch in Unova?" Ash thinks it over. "Several, you'll see them in the gym battles." "How many in Hoenn?" He asks her. 16 if you don't count evolved forms. She replies and takes another dry NK of the soup. "I want to know everything that happened in Unova." Then Ash says, "And you can tell me what you did in Hoenn." After our heroes finish the soup, them and their Pokemon go to sleep and are ready to voyage into MT Moon when dawn comes, no pun intended. Okay, Ash has caught a Gulpin, and as you can see I have made the prediction of Scraggy evolving, which is the most likely outcome. Dawn and Ash woke up in the morning and began the voyage into MT Moon. "How dark do you think it is inside?" Ash pulls out a lantern from his pack. "I come prepared for everything now." The trainer and coordinator come in through the cave entrance, and of course was as dark as night until Ash turns on the lantern. "See, nothing to worry about." Suddenly he sees several Zubats around them who are hanging upside down, and Ash just says, "Damn it." Then the Zubats wake up and begin scattering, and of course they start screaming, but Ash keeps a firm grip on the lantern. "Ash, what do we do?" Ash then smiles confidently. "Pikachu, use Shock Wave." Pikachu uses the attack and unleashes a variety of bolts which hits one of them and knocks it out, and the others simply fly off scared. Then Ash pulls out a Pokeball and throws it at the paralyzed bat Pokemon, which absorbs it and wobbles 3 times and stops, confirming its capture, and teleports away. It's at Professor Oak's lab. They continue on into the cave. And suddenly Ash steps on a rock which jumps and reveals itself a Geodude and yells angrily while swinging its fists, "Geodude." Ash then pulls out his Pokédex. Geodude, the rock Pokemon. At rest, it looks just like a rock. Carelessly stepping on it will make it swing its fists angrily. Geodude then proceeds to use Rock Throw at them, but Ash yells, "Pikachu, counter with Iron Tail." Pikachu obeys ND uses Iron Tail which shatters the rock, now use Quick Attack. Pikachu runs at the rock Pokémon with a quick speed and collides knocking Geodude out cold. Ash then pulls out an empty Pokeball and throws it at the unconscious Geodude which absorbs it, then wobbles and blinks 3 times and stops, confirming the capture, then teleports away to Professor Oak's lab. That makes 7 so far. Ash the N turns to see 2 moonstones in the wall. Well, look, 2 moonstones. He pulls out a Pokeball and it unleashes Gabite, which he then yells, Gabite. Ash then points in the direction of the stones. Abbott use Rock Smash to get those moonstones out. He does what Ash says and runs towards the stones and uses a Power Punch which dislodges the stones out. Ash picks one up and puts it in his bag. Ladon does the same, then suddenly someone comes in with a flashlight and says, "Who's there?" Ash recognizes it as the scientist named Seymour he met 6 years ago. "Seymour, it's me, Ash." Seymour turns off the flashlight. "Oh Ash, thank goodness it's you." Ash turns to Dawn. "Dawn, this is Seymour, he's a scientist, I met him when I first came here 6 years ago." Seymour notices Gabite. "Ash, I can see you've been in the Sinnoh region," he says. "Seymour, what do you study?" Dawn asks curiously. "I study the Clefairies, Dawn. My theory is that they came here in shuttle which carried a moonstone bigger than any other," Seymour replies with great pride. Ash turns to Dawn to finish the story. "After we got rid of Team Rocket who were causing some trouble for the Clefairy, Seymour started living here." Ash the N hears something in the cave. "King Keldor, use strength." Ash instantly recognizes the voice and runs towards it and then looks down the cavern to see it is his rival from the Unova region, Trip, and his King Keldor, who are currently fighting a Sandshrew which loses quickly to King Keldor. Then Trip throws a Pokeball on the mouse Pokemon which absorbs it and wobbles 3 times, confirming its capture. And Trip then picks it up and puts it in his pocket. "Ash, who's that?" Dawn asks. "That's Trip, we were rivals in the Unova region, one haven't seen him since the Unova League." Ash replies, "I can hear ever why word you're saying, Ash," Trip says, and then almost afterwards Ash looks way down to Trip and King Keldor looking up. They then slide down with Seymour and Dawn pulls out her Pokédex, curious about this unfamiliar Pokémon. King Keldor, the muscular Pokémon in the evolved form of Girder. It is thought that King Keldor taught humans how to make concrete more than 2,000 years ago. "This is Dawn," Trip interrupts. "How do you know my name?" Dawn AKS, "My sister watched a rerun of the Wallace Cup. I got interested when I saw Ash on it." Trip explains, "The Hoenn champion Wallace recommended it, so my Pokem on can get stronger." Ash corrects Trip, thinking he is sometimes a coordinator. "Anyway, I decided to come here and challenge the Kanto League, see what the boonies can do," Trip says, and Dawn then says, "Hey, that was a little rude." That's how he thinks about Kanto and everyone here. Ash explains, "Anyway, I got to get moving," Trip replies before walking off. Trip, "Let's battle," Ash says loudly. Trip Street ops and turns around and smiles. "I guess I can make some time for beating you. How about a 2-on-2? Ash nods in agreement. Trip pulls out a Pokeball. "Serperior, go." He throws a Pokeball up and the regal Pokemon comes out, Serperior. And Dawn pulls out her Pokédex, curious about this Pokemon also. Serperior, the regal Pokemon in the evolved form of Servine. It can stop its opponent's movements with just a glare. It takes in solar energy and boosts it internally. "So it's Serperior then, Gabite, I choose you." He throws a Pokeball and the cave Pokemon is unleashed and yells, "Gabite." "So T.S. must that Gibble I saw on the Lily of the Valley conference when it went up against that Darkrai," Trip says. Ash flashes back to that event just a few years ago when he fought Tobias, a mysterious TRA Inner who owned both a Darkrai and Latios. Sceptile managed to defeat the Pitch Black Pokemon, but the rest lost to the Eon Pokemon. He couldn't even imagine what other Pokemon the mysterious trainer had at his disposal. Gabite use Flamethrower, Ash commands, knowing this is a move he learned after evolving. Then the cave Pokemon unleashes a beam of fire which hits the regal Pokemon, making it faint. Instantly, and Trip then recalls the fainted regal Pokemon. Serperior return. Then he pulls out another and says, "Jellicent, go." He throws the Pokeball and the floating Pokemon emerges, and Dawn then LLs out her Pokédex, very curious about his one. Jellicent, the floating Pokemon in the evolved form of Frillish. They propel themselves by expelling absorbed seawater from their bodies. Their favorite food is life energy. Use Ice Beam. Jellicent obeys and unleashes a blue beam, but Gabite jumps and avoids the attack but is hit by another shot and Gabite falls down fainted. Gabite return, good job, buddy, Ash says and pulls out another, Gulpin, I choose you. He throws the poke ball up and the stomach Pokemon is unleashed, Gulpin, Jellicent water pulse. Jellicent obeys as he generates a blue bee. All of water which hits Gulpin but the stomach Pokemon stays up, Gulpin use toxic. Gulpin obeys and sprays a purple liquid at the floating Pokemon which while not doing any real damage leaves the floating Pokemon badly poisoned. I see Ash used Gulpin because his has the move Toxic, Seymour says to Dawn witnessing Ash's battle strategy. Jellicent use Nightshade. Jellicent hears this and unleash multiple rings of energy, Gulpin dodge and use Acid Spray. Gulpin obeys and shoots acid liquid at Jellicent damaging him further and then is hurt by the poisoning and then finally gives out and faints. Gulpin yells in victory and Trip returns Jellicent to his poke ball. Nice job Jellicent. He then looks at Ash. That was a good battle Ash, I'll see you when I see you, I'm off to the seer. Yuleen Gym. Ash then steps in, that's where we're going. Trip smiles and says, then I'll see you there. Trip then walks off and Ash turns to Seymour. Okay Seymour, it was good seeing you. Seymour then asks, Tops, wait Ash, I want to show you something. He runs over to his trailer where he sleeps in and gets something, then runs back to Ash and shows him a Pokemon fossil and Ash says, a Pokemon fossil, N pulls out his Pokédex to see which kind it is and what Pokemon it was. The dome fossil is the fossilized remains of Kabuto. It then switches to the Kabuto section. Kabuto, the shellfish Pokemon. It is thought to have inhabited beaches 300 million years ago. It is protected by a stiff shell. I found it deep in the cave a few months ago but I want you to have it. Ash then asks, but where can revive it? Seymour then answers, there's a research center right where you're going, it will take just a day to do it. Ash turns to Dawn. Then let's go Dawn. Ash shakes hands with Seymour and waves goodbye. And along with Dawn begins the voyage out of MT. Moon and unknown to them, a Cleffa follows them after witnessing the battle that just occurred as our heroes leave so Ash may challenge his old friend and the Cerulean gym leader Misty. Ash and Dawn finally exit MT. Moon Ash thinks of what his Kabuto could be like when it is revived and what Pokemon he could use in the match against Misty. Suddenly as they enter the forest, several Pineco drop down right in front of them. Pineco. Dawn pulls out her Pokédex curious about the bagworm Pokemon. Pineco, the bagworm Pokemon, it hangs and waits for flying insect prey to come near. It does not move about much on its own. Dawn, watch out, if we provoke them they'll use explosion. Dawn then smiles and pulls out a dusk ball. I know a way, come on out mischievous. She throws the dusk ball in the air and the Screech Pokemon yells, Ms. You caught a mischievous, whoa. Ash replies in amazement. Confused Ray. Dawn commands then the Screech Pokemon who N unleashes a wave of energy on the bagworm Pokemon causing them confusion to fall down while the others manage to survive it and bounce off. Then the trainer and coordinator throws a poke ball on ACH of the bagworm Pokemon which wobbles 3 times and both confirm their captures while Ash's teleports away. Dawn picks hers up since she only has 5 others on her party and puts it in her pack. Ash hears some rustling in the forest and walks over to the source of it and then pokes his head in the bushes and sees a Cleffa eating an Oron berry. Whoa, a Cleffa. He pulls out his Pokédex. Cleffa, the star-shaped Pokemon. When numerous meteors illuminate the night sky, sightings of Cleffa strangely increase. He then pulls out his poke ball and yells, Gabite, I choose you. He throws the poke ball. Up and the cave Pokemon is unleashed, Gabite. Cleffa turns to see the cave Pokemon towering over her and she smiles evilly and then unleashes multiple hearts onto Gabite which hits him and becomes infatuated. It's Attract. Ash yells seeing the attack the star-shaped Pokemon unleashed on his Gabite and recalls Gabite and pulls out another Pokemon, Go Eevee. He throws the poke ball and the evolutionary Pokemon is unleashed, Eve. Cleffa uses another Attract attack on Ash's Eevee but does nothing when it hits and Ash watches in shock. Whoa, this means Eevee is a girl. Eevee then uses her bite attack on Cleffa which has a critical hit and Cleffa falls down fainted. Ash then pulls out an empty poke ball which then absorbs the star-shaped Pokemon and blinks and wobbles 3 times confirming its capture and then teleports away to Professor Oak's lab. Dawn then comes in. Ash, what happened? She asks, I caught a Cleffa and I also learned Evie is a girl. Ash replies and Evie yells, Eve. Suddenly then hear a faint buzzing noise and turn to see a swarm of Bedrill behind them. Dawn run. The duo was about to start when a voice fairly familiar to Ash spoke, Sceptile use Hyper Beam. A second voice came up which was familiar to both of them, Glaceon Ice Beam. The two Pokémon obey and unleash a red beam of energy and a blue beam of ice onto the swarm of bug Pokémon, and while the oath Flea2 falls down fainted and the two who ordered the Pokémon to attack throw two poke balls at them, capturing them instantly and return to their hands. Good to see you, Ash, the male speaks. Ash then raises his head to see his Hoenn traveling companions May and Max. Deep in the forest of Route 4 an Elekid walks through the forest looking happy and feeling nice on this beautiful summer day in Kanto region and stops to hear something behind the bushes. Ash, when did you catch an Eevee? May says while petting the adorable evolutionary Pokémon, I caught her right before I entered Viridian Forest. Ash explains to the coordinator. Suddenly Sceptile is hit by a string shot attack but quickly breaks free due to his strength. SCEP, the forest Pokémon mutters and then points to a tree in the distance which the four turn to and see a Weedle on top. A Weddle, Ash says, and Dawn out of curiosity pulls out her Pokédex. Weedle, the hairy bug Pokémon, its poison stinger is very powerful. Its bright-colored body is intended to warn off its enemies. Weedle then uses a poison sting attack intended for Sceptile, who counters it using Leaf Storm. Ash then pulls out a Pokeball and throws it in the air. Scrafty, I choose you. He yells and in a flash the hoodlum Pokémon comes out, Scrafty. May then pulls out her Pokédex to look up the data on this unfamiliar Pokémon. Scrafty, the hoodlum Pokémon in the evolved form of Scraggy. It can smash concrete blocks with its kicking attacks. The one with the biggest crest is the group leader. Use Incinerate. Ash commands the hoodlum to do W. Hitch then obeys and unleashes a large amount of fire on the hairy bug Pokémon, making it faint almost instantly but also causes the tree to set on fire. Oh no, Ash says, realizing he just started a fire. Blastoise take the stage. May says after throwing a Pokeball in the air and in a flash the shellfish Pokémon comes out and yells, Blastoise. And upon seeing the shellfish Pokémon, Dawn pulls out her Pokédex in curiosity. Blastoise, the shellfish Pokémon in the evolved form of Wartortle. The rocket cannons on its shell fire jets of water capable of punching holes through thick steel. Use Hydro Pump. May commands the shellfish Pokémon to do, who then unleashes a powerful water jet on the burning trees which puts them out, stopping the fire from spreading. Ash then pulls out an empty K-ball and throws it on the fainted Weedle, which absorbs it and wobbles and blinks several times and halts, confirming the capture, and then teleports away to Professor Oak's lab. So May, when did Wartortle evolve? Ash asks his old companion. A couple months ago actually. She then recalls Blastoise back to its Pokeball. So what are you guys doing back in Kanto? Ash asks May and Max. Sightseeing. Mostly, and we're here to see someone, Max answers. Well, I'm retrying the Pokemon League starting with Kanto, Ash tells his old traveling companions, and I'm going to enter the contests here, Dawn adds. A small voice comes up and the four turn to the source of the voice, which is the Elekid watching them, who has a determined smile on its face. It's an Elekid, it must have watched the battle. Max says. Then the Elekid begins rotating its arms and begins to generate electricity and fires a spark at attack at the group, but they jump out of the way quickly. Eevee use Shadow Ball. Ash orders the evolutionary Pokémon to use, which she obeys and unleashes a orb of darkness upon the electric Pokémon, which throws it to the other side of the area but survives the hit and then charges at the evolutionary Pokémon with Thunder Punch. Dodge it and use Attract. Ash says to Eevee, who then dodges the Thunder Punch and unleashes an array of hearts which hit Elekid and soon becomes infatuated. Shish, then seeing the opportunity, pulls out an empty Pokeball and yells, now go Pokeball. And throws the Pokeball at the love-struck Pokémon, which absorbs him and which then wobbles and blinks Severa times until coming to a halt and teleports away to Professor Oak's lab. I'm definitely using Elekid against Misty, Ash says after capturing the electric Pokémon. So Cerulean City is where you're going next? Max asks. Yep, also I'm going to the research place to have this fossil revived. He answers Max's question and then shows them the dome fossil Seymour gave him. Whoa, a dome fossil, Max says in Amazement, and when it's revived I'll have a Kabuto, Ash says with excitement. We'll come along with you Ash mainly because we were on our way to Cerulean City anyway, May says to her old companion. Okay then let's go, Ash says to the others and they walk down the forest route looking ready for anything the Kanto region can throw at them. With an Ellicott at our hero's side it's sure to be an interesting match with Misty very soon. Until then stay tuned. Inside a cave not too far the location of where our heroes are elite officer for Team Rocket Domino along with agents Cassidy and Butch opens up a laptop which begins a communication with Giovanni. Domino begins the communication, "Sir, we are at least 1 mile away from Cerulean City. Excellent, your mission is to infiltrate Cerulean City and take a fossil revival machine from the research facility." Giovanni explains the team's mission to her. "The machine is important to my research, Drive," Namba says, who appears in a transmission next to Giovanni. "Drive. Samba," Cassidy says while failing to remember his name. "It's Namba, you bimbo." The Team Rocket scientist yells angrily. "These machines are used to revive fossilized Pokémon," Giovanni explains to his agents while the computer shows them pictures of Omanite, Kabuto, Cranidos and Shieldon. "Domino will be in charge of the mission since she is the highest ranking officer," Giovanni explains to the three, who respond with, "Sir," and Namba's communication ends as does his. Meanwhile our heroes are about to enter Cerulean City, site of Ash's second Kanto region gym battle. "It's been so low since I've been here." Suddenly something goes on top of Ash's head and he looks up to see it is a Yanma. "Hey, Yanma," Ash says after seeing the clear-wing Pokémon. May then pulls out her Pokédex to see Yanma's data. Yanma, the clear-wing Pokémon. If it flaps its wings really fast, it can generate shock waves that will shatter windows in the area. Yan, the clear-wing Pokémon says and then moves to Max's head. "Hey, I could use this in my gym battle against Misty," Ash says excitedly and looks at Pikachu. "Pikachu, use Thunder Wave," Ash tells Pikachu, who then replies with, "Pika." Pikachu T. Hen takes aim at the clear-wing Pokémon who has jumped off Max's head and unleashes a charge of electricity on it which then paralyzes it. Ash then pulls out a net ball and says, "Go net ball." He then throws it on the clear-wing Pokémon which absorbs it quickly and begins to wobble and blink several times and halts, confirming the capture. It then teleports away to Professor Oak's lab. "Ash, what's a net ball?" May asks. "It's a Pokeball that works really well on water and bug-type Pokémon," Ash replies. Suddenly Ash's Pokegear rings and answers it, who is none other than Professor Oak. "Professor Oak, what is it?" Ash asks. "It's important you remember Pokémon Hunter J, correct?" Ash shuddered at the Pokémon professor's words and remembers the feared Pokémon Hunter who he encountered multiple times in the Sinnoh region about 3 years ago. Her work disgusted Ash, the way she treated Pokémon. "I hoped after her ship crashed into Lake Verity and blew up he hoped to see the last of her, but perhaps not. Yami and Dawn remember her," Ash relies with great contempt. "Ash, who's Hunter J?" May asks with curiosity, and within a flash Ash pulls out his laptop and looks up a wanted poster of her. ND turns it to May and Max. "Jay is a Pokémon hunter. Me, Dawn and Brock ran into her a few times in Sinnoh. She captures Pokémon that she was hired to capture, and if she finds one she thinks is worth something she captures it." "That sounds awful," May says with disgust. "May, Max, is that you?" Professor Oak asks. "Oh, of course, Professor," May replies, for the two of them. "Well, it's good to both of you." He then returns to the reason he called Ash. "Anyway, the reason I called is because there have been recent sightings of her here in Kanto." Ash then responds with shock face and asks, "Where was she sighted?" "She was sighted near Cinnabar Island and just off the coast of Vermilion City, but nowhere near Pallet Town. If you're afraid she'll try and steal the Pokémon here," Professor Oak assures Ash on his worries. "Thanks, Professor, I'll call you back when I get to the center." He then ends his call with the Pokémon professor. "I can't believe she's back. How did she survive that?" Dawn says, and Max asks, "Survive what?" "The last time she was seen she was hired by Team Galactic to steal the 3 Lake Guardians Mesprit, Azulf and Uxie," Ash begins to explain. Ash continues to explain. But Team Galactic double-crossed her and sent her ship crashing down into Lake Verity. Everyone including me thought she was killed, but somehow she survived. Now she's in Kanto, probably looking for our Pokémon to steal," May says after hearing Ash's story. Yeah, but for now let's focus on the gym battle, Max says, trying to get everyone back on topic. Oh yeah, of course, Ash says with an embarrassed face. The four then run down the road to Cerulean City and Pikachu smells a rather sweet-smelling aroma and tugs on Ash's shoulder going, "Pika Pie." Ash then says, "What is it, Pikachu?" Pikachu then points to a tree that is covered in honey. "Hey, it's a honey tree." Ash then notices several Combee flying around the trees. "Hey, we must be near a place where Combee live," Dawn says, seeing several Combee in the area, and May pulls out her Pokédex as she has not seen a Pokémon like this yet. Combee, the tiny bee Pokémon. A Pokémon formed by 3 others. It busily carries sweet floral honey to Vespiquen. And Vespiquen is. May asks and looks up Vespiquen in the Pokédex. Vespiquen, the beehive Pokémon and the evolved form of Combee. When endangered, grubs from its 6-cell honeycomb strike back. There is only one in a colony. Whoa, this Pokémon sounds interesting, May says. Yeah, but only female Combee can evolve into Vespiquen. I know a way to find one, Ash says, intending to capture a female comb. And pulls out a Pokeball. "Eevee, I choose you." He then throws the Pokeball in the air and the evolutionary Pokémon is unleashed. Eve. Use attract on all the Combee, he says. Soon after, Eevee winks and unleashes multiple hearts at the tiny bee Pokémon and many become infatuated by the effect. There's got to be one somewhere, Ash says to himself, and notices one that was not affected by the attract. There's a female, Ash says, and points at the female Combee who starts to fly away. Pikachu, use Thunderbolt, Ash tells the mouse Pokémon, who soon unleashes an electric shock on Combee, who Hen falls to the ground fainted, and Ash pulls out an empty Pokeball. "Now go Pokeball," he says, and then throws the Pokeball at the tiny bee Pokémon, which absorbs it, then wobbles and blinks several times and halts, confirming its capture, and teleports away to Professor Oak's lab. "Now with some training I'll have a Vespiquen," Ash says, and turns away to see the many angry Combee in front of him. His friends, and Max looks confident, pulls out a Pokeball and throws it in the air. "Dusknoir, confusion," he says, and in a flash the Gripper Pokémon is unleashed and murmurs, "Dusknoir," and unleashes a ray that sends the tiny bee Pokémon into confusion. "Quick, the confusion will wear off," Max says to the others as they run away from the tiny bee Pokémon. Ash and friends then enter the city and find a table with an umbrella protecting them from the shade. "That was close, thanks, Max," Ash says to his Hoenn companion. "Thank Dusknoir, she used Confuse Ray." May then pulls out her Pokédex in curiosity of her brother's new Pokémon. Dusknoir, the Gripper Pokémon and the evolved form of Dusclops. This feared Pokémon is said to travel to worlds unknown. Some even believe that it takes lost spirits along with it. "I can see Dusclops evolved, Max," May says to her younger brother, and Ash sits up after catching his breath after running from the angry Combee. "Okay, first let's go to the research facility," the zealous Pokémon trainer says, eager to revive and capture a Kabuto, and the four begin to travel through the city, and after at least 15 minutes they finally arrive at the research facility. "So, who is the person you guys came here to see?" Ash asks the siblings, and May smiles and replies, "You'll see." They enter the facility to see May, and Max's parents Norman and Caroline are there with AC Hansy, and they turn around to see their children. "May, Max, you're just in time," Caroline says, glad to see her children, and Norman turns to Ash. "Ash, it's good to see you again, and you must be Dawn," he says, noticing Dawn next to Ash. "You're Norman, the Petalburg gym leader, and May and Max's dad, right?" Dawn asks. "Yes, of course," he answers, and the Chansey with them says, "Chansey." Ash then notices it and pulls out his Pokédex in curiosity. Chansey, the egg Pokémon and the evolved form of Happiny. A kindly Pokémon that lays highly nutritious eggs and shares them with injured Pokémon or people. Ash then asks, "Norman, whose Chansey is this?" "It's my Chansey, Ash," Norman replies. "I caught it while it was a Happiny." Norman tells Ash about the egg Pokémon. Norman flashes back to him and Caroline in the greenhouse watering the plants, and suddenly May's Delcatty, who weeks prior evolved from contact with a moonstone, runs out of the bushes and brushes up against Caroline's legs and meows, "Del Del," and Caroline, realizing something's wrong, says, "Delcatty, what's wrong?" Delcatty then motions them to follow her, which they acknowledge. They then follow Delcatty and find a Happiny unsuccessfully attemptee. to pluck berries from the trees but can't due to her small stature, but suddenly she hears a crack of the branch and Norman hands her an oran berry and looks up to a smiling Norman and gratefully takes the oran berry and eats it. Soon after I captured Happiny, and since it had a oval stone in its pouch already, it just took a little training for it to evolve into Chansey. Another flashback shows Chansey using attacks such as Attract, Pound and Focus Punch on a challenger's Tauros, Drapion and Graveler. After its evolution I started using Chansey in gym battles next to slacking Chansey as nay of my most powerful Pokémon. Another shows Chansey being defeated by a Magmortar belonging to none other than Norman's son Max. But like all Pokémon, it doesn't always win a battle, but its power few. And kind none of the less. He finishes his story of how he caught Chansey. So anyway, we're here to visit someone, Norman explains to Ash. You see, he is R. But before Norman could finish, a door opens and the 8 turn to it to see a man in his early 20s come in surprised and says, "Mom, Dad, Max, May." Caroline runs in and hugs the man greatly, saying, "Oh Derek, my baby." "Hey May, who is that anyway?" Ash asks the coordinator from Hoenn. "He's my brother," she says with a smile. After getting finally Caroline off of him, Derek approaches Ash. "So you must be Ash, Max has told me about you." Ash then shakes hands with Derek. "May, why haven't you ever tell me about Derek?" Ash asks the Hoenn coordinator. "I just never got to telling you about him," May replies after Ash asked about her older brother. "So Derek, what do you do here?" Ash asks Derek. "I'm a researcher here, Ash. I've been at this for at least 4 years." "Oh good, cause I have this fossil that I need to revive," Ash says and pulls out the dome fossil Seymour gave him in MT. Moon and Derek excitedly grabs it and examines it. A dome fossil, amazing. "I know it's the fossil of a Kabuto," Ash says. "Our machines can revive it, but will take 24 hours. I'll be alerted when it's done," Derek says, carrying the fossil to one of the revival machine. "Where did you find that fossil anyway, Ash?" May asks. MT. Moon, Seymour, a scient. ISTS I met during my first journey gave it to me when me and Dawn were in there, Ash answers May's question. Soon afterwards our heroes along with Norman and Caroline go to the local Pokémon Center. "So you're re-challenging the Pokémon Leagues, Ash?" Norman says after hearing Ash's reason for traveling through the Kanto region. "Yeah, so when I'm in Hoenn you're the first one I'll go to," Ash replies, telling N. Orman the Petalburg gym will be his first challenge. Norman smiles and says, "I like your attitude, Ash. Anyway, the reason we're here in Kanto is to see Derek. We haven't seen him in at least 3 years." Ash then turns to Max and asks, "Hey Max, what was your position in the Hoenn League?" Max then blinks several times and says, "Well, I came in first place." "What, really?" Ash asks. "Yeah, I did actually, but I nearly lost," Max says. He then flashes back to the final round of the Evergreen Conference and the announcer yells out, "Both trainers are down to their last Pokémon, Max with Sceptile and Berry Wit. Empoleon begin." This trainer named Barry had an Empoleon with him who was pretty tough and he nearly beat us, but Sceptile's Overgrow kicked in and Sceptile was able to beat it with Solar Beam and Leaf Blade. So Barry was in the Hoenn region. One wonder where he is now, Dawn says, thinking where the energetic trainer could have gone after that defeat. "I have to call Professor Oak so I can get Pokemon I need for my battle with Misty," Ash says, who gets up and goes over the video phone and dials the number, and Professor Oak answers it, who is examining Combee. Ash, I see you're in Cerulean Sea. Ity, the Pokemon professor says. "Hey Professor, so what are you doing with Combee?" Ash asks after greeting Oak. "I was examining it. You can see that it's female from the dot on its forehead, the Kemen Professor says, pointing to the tiny bee Pokemons, who then says, "Calm. Anyway Professor, I brought my dome fossil here. May and Max's older brother Derek is reviving it in at the facility," Ash says. "Oh, I've actually heard of Derek from Professor Birch. He's a very intelligent one," Professor Oak says. "So Professor, I need some of my other Pokemon for my gym battle with Misty," Ash says. "Oh, of course," the Pokemon professor says. Dawn then notices a poster which is advertising a Pokemon contest in Saffron City. "There's a Pokemon contest in 2 weeks in Saffron City," Dawn reads the poster excitedly. Ash and the others then go out to Route 25 to train, and Ash pulls out 5 Pokeballs he rotated with Professor Oak and says, "Everyone come on out. and throws the poke balls in the air which unleashes Ivysaur, Elekid, Seismitoad, Yanma and Leavanny. What are those Pokémon? Norman asks when he sees the vibration in nurturing Pokémon. Dawn then pulls out her Pokédex's dismay. Say, Smitoad, the vibration Pokémon in the evolved form of Palpitoad. They shoot paralyzing liquid from their head bumps. They use vibration to hurt their opponents. Leavanny, the nurturing Pokémon in the evolved form of Swadloon. It keeps its eggs warm with heat from fermenting leaves. It also uses leaves to make warm wrappings for Sewaddle. I caught them in Unova, Norman, Ash says, and Norman replies by saying, I've heard of Unova, actually you were there. Yeah, I caught a bunch of new Pokémon. You see, the Unova region is more far away from the other regions, the Pokémon there can only be found here, and it's rare to see a Pokémon from the other regions there also. Max then pulls out a Pokeball and throws it in the air, and in a flash a shiny Ursaring comes out yelling, Ermang. And Yanma flies over. Okay, then Yanma uses Sonic Boom. Yanma obeys and unleashes shock waves from its wings which hits the hibernator Pokémon, sending it flying, but quickly gets back on its feet. May, where did Max find a shiny Ursaring? Dawn asks, amazed at the Ursaring's unique color. He caught it while he was on the way to Dewford City when it was still a Teddiursa, May explains. And since it evolved, it's been a major powerhouse in his team, Norman adds to his daughter's statement. Hyper Beam. Max says to the hibernator Pokémon, who charges up a red beam of energy which hits the clear-wing Pokémon CH does some damage but does not defeat Yanma, who is not about to give up. Yanma uses Ancient Power. Yanma then does as its trainer commands and generates a glowing ball of energy and fires at Ursaring, who takes quite a bit of damage from it, and suddenly Yanma begins to glow and everyone looks in shock and awe, and Max says from observation, Yanma is evolving. While evolving, Yanma's two horns NNECT into one and two others grow on the back and one on the edge of the tail, and grows in size and the seizes and has now become a Yanmega, and with that says, Yanme. Ash then says with joy, Yanma. S now Yanmega. May then pulls out her Pokédex. Yanmega, the Ogre Darner Pokémon in the evolved form of Yanma. This six-legged Pokémon is easily capable of transporting an adult in flight. The wings on its tail help it stay balanced. I've heard Yanma evolves after learning Ancient Power actually, Norman says. That's right, Dad, the same goes with Piloswine to be able to become Mammoth Swine, Max adds to his father's statement. Yanmega use Solar Beam. Ash commands the newly evolved Ogre Darner Pokémon, who quickly charges up a beam of yellow and white energy, who unleashes it, instantly knocking out the hibernator Pokémon. Ursaring return, Max says, recalling his fainted Pokémon back to his Pokeball and puts it back in his pack. Ash, Yanmega will do great against Misty, May says after witnessing Yanmega's powerful attacks, and Yanmega then flies away from the group, curious of the area it is currently in. Yanmega, wait, Ash says, trying to keep us with the Ogre Darner Pokémon. At the end of Cerulean Cape, a young woman with orange hair, a one-piece white swimsuit wearing a unzipped jacket, stands there admiring the beautiful view of the ocean, and suddenly Yanmega sets down on her head and he looks up to see the Ogre Darner Pokémon, who says, Yan me. While searching for the Ogre Darner Pokémon, the group hears a frightened scream from the distance. That sounds like Misty, Ash says, recognizing that scream from any time she saw a bug Pokémon. She must have met Yanmega. As Ash starts to run for the direction, Misty comes running like the Road Runner away from Yanmega, who is flying towards her, and Ash stops, as does Misty, who then asks, Ash. Oh hey Mist. Yanmega then perches itself on top of its trainer's head. Oh Misty, this is my Yanmega, it just evolved from Yanma while we were training, Ash explains to his old friend, who has a phobia of bug-type Pokémon. The rest of the group follows Ash to his location to find he has already found Yanmega and Misty. Oh Ash, you found them, Dawn says. May, Max, it's good to see again, and you're Norman and Caroline, their parents, right? Misty asks. Correct, Norman answers, and Misty turns to Dawn. You're Dawn, I've seen you on the Sinnoh and Hoenn P. Pokemon contests, Misty says, recognizing Dawn from TV. Thank you for recognizing me, Dawn says, hoping she doesn't bring up her defeat at the Hoenn Grand Festival, and Misty then turns to Ash. So Ash, why are you here in Cerulean? Ash then smiles and says, I'm retrying the Pokemon Leagues one by one. He then pulls out his badge case and displays the Boulder badge. I've already beaten Brock's younger Brother Forrest, the new Pewter City gym leader. Well, I guess you're here to challenge me then. Well, you might as well go to another gym, Ash, Misty says with an arrogant attitude. And why is that? Ash inquires with a semi-mad tone. Because the last time you got the Cascade badge is because my sisters felt sorry for you, she says. Well, this time will be different, you'll see. Ash yells. As the Grow P watches this, Max says, Misty should not have set Ash off like that. Caroline then says, let's hope this doesn't get too out of hand. Misty then says, then let's see how you've improved at the Cerulean gym. Alright. Ash says, and Pikachu agrees with a Pika. Now eager to challenge his old friend Misty to a battle at the Cerulean City gym, Ash will need to use all the skills he has acquired to defeat Misty. Stay tuned. Ash and the group enter the Cerulean gym and everyone is admiring the beauty of the water-type gym, which is the location of his second Kanto League gym battle with his old traveling companion Misty. Misty's 3 older sisters perform water ballets here when there's no challengers, Ash explains to the rest of the group. The group passes an aquarium and several of Misty's Pokémon who recognizes Ash swim to him, which includes Starmie, Staryu, Goldeen and a Kingdra, which Ash recognizes as Misty's Horsey, who appears to have evolved in the past few years. Whoa, Horsey evolved, Ash says with excitement. Dawn then pulls out her Pokédex in curiosity. Kingdra, the dragon Pokémon and the evolved form of Seadra. It sleeps deep on the ocean floor to build its energy. It is said to cause tornadoes as it wakes. Ash then deciding to make some last-minute changes in Pokémon and goes to the nearest phone to swap Pokémon. While he does that, the 5 walks into the battlefield. YCH is filled with people. Whoa, what's going on? Max asks, surprised that so many people are in Jim's battlefield. I can explain that, Max, a voice came up. May and Max recognizes anywhere and turns arrow. To see Scott, founder of the Battle Frontier, sitting in the seats of the battlefield. Scott. The siblings say, shocked to see him. Good to see you both. You see, some people in Cerulean like to watch the water ballets, some like to watch the gym battles, so people come here a lot more lately to watch the gym matches, the Battle Frontier founder explains. Ash is the challenger today, actually, Scott. Max says, I guessed as much since you're here. Scott replies, he's retrying the Pokemon League. Scott, so far he's beating Pewter Gym already. May adds, filling Scott in on what's happening with Ash. Then let's see how Ash has improved since the last time I saw him. Scott says, eager to see how Ash has improved in the last 3 years. Misty enters the battlefield as Ash does on the opposite side and the referee comes in. The gym battle between Misty, the gym leader, and Ash, the challenger, will now begin. It will be a full 6-on-6 battle and will be over when all 6 on either side are BLE to battle, and furthermore only the challenger will be allowed to make substitution in Pokemon begin. The referee explains to the 2. Misty then pulls out a Pokeball and says, Melodic, I choose you. And in a flash the tender Pokemon comes out of its Pokeball with a M.I. Whoa, a Melodic. Dawn says, amazed at the beauty of the tender Pokemon. Ash then pulls out his own Pokeball and says, Pidgeot, I choose you. And in a flash the bird Pokemon comes out in a flash yelling, Pidgeot. Misty then looks in amazement to see the Pidgeot Ash released 5 years ago to protect the Pidgey and Pidgeotto in Viridian Forest from a Spearow flock on the opposite side of the battlefield. Dawn then pulls out her Pokédex. Pidgeot, the bird Pokemon and the evolved form of Pidgeotto. By flapping its wings with all its might, Pidgeot can make a gust of wind capable of bending tall trees. Melodic, use Ice Beam. Misty commands the tender Pokemon after regaining focus, who obeys and unleashes a blue beam. Dodge it. Ash says to the bird Pokemon, who does just that. Now use Brave Bird. Ash says to Pidgeot, who then closes its wings and bursts into flames and dives at Melodic, and the flames change to a blue aura and strikes the tender Pokemon, creating a huge explosion. After the smoke clears, it shows Melodic has fainted and Pidgeot still stands but has done some major recoil damage. And the referee proclaims, Melodic is unable to battle the winner as Pidgeot. Misty then recalled Melodic back to its Pokeball. Misty then pulls out another Pokeball and yells, Starmie, it's your turn. And in a flash the mysterious Pokemon comes out and Dawn pulls out her Pokédex. Starmie, the mysterious Pokemon and the evolved form of Staryu. The center section of its body is called the core. It glows in a different color each time it is seen. Ash then says, Pidgeot, return. Deciding Pidgeot is worn out recalls Pidgeot back to its Pokeball and pulls out another. He then throws it in the air and says, "Torterra, I choose you." And in a flash the continent Pokemon comes out and lands on a pad big enough for it and yells, "Torterra." The crowd cheers at the obvious power and strength of the sea. Continent Pokemon and Misty then yells, "Use Bubble Beam." And Starmie then unleashes multiple bubbles upon Torterra, but before they could, Ash says, "Use Protect." And within a second of hearing the order, Torterra generates a green force field around itself which protects it from the Bubble Beam attack. Misty, a bit aggravated by Ash's tactics, says, "Use Swift." Starmie then unleashes several stars at Torterra, but Ash, thinking quickly, says, "Torterra, use Solar Beam." After hearing the order, Torterra begins to absorb light from the sun as the Swift attacks grow closer and unleashes a yellow and white beam upon the Swift attack, destroying them and colliding with Starmie, throwing it across the battlefield, causing it to crash into the water. Fainted Starmie is unable to battle the winner as Torterra. He referee announces. Misty then recalls Starmie, surprised she only had 4 Pokemon left while Ash still had all 6 in decent condition. She then pulls out another Pokeball and smiles, knowing this nay will be hard to beat, and yells, "Gyarados, I choose you." In a flash the atrocious Pokemon comes out and roars loudly. Ash then recalls Torterra back to its Pokeball and pulls out another, throws it in the air and says, "Elekid, I choose you." And in a flash the electric Pokemon comes out of the Pokeball with a L. Scott, who is observing, says, "I see Ash's strategy is to use Pokemon that have pay advantages over the type of Pokemon the gym leader uses. Clever, but that doesn't always work, Scott. Let's see what Ash has planned." Norman adds to the Battle Frontier founder's statement. "Use Flamethrower." Misty commands the atrocious Pokemon, who then unleashes a beam of flames, but Elekid jumps out of the way and Ash says, "Elekid, use Electro Ball." Elekid obeys and generates a ball of electricity and unleashes it, but Misty then says, "Dodge it." Gyarados then dodges the attack on the order of his mistress. Elekid then runs up his body due to his speed. "Use Thunder Punch." Ash says to Elekid, who then generates a punch of electricity which collides with the atrocious Pokemon's face, which causes it to fall down, but while does not defeat it, causes him to become paralyzed. Ash's Elekid's ability must be static, Scott said, knowing that static is a common ability for Elekid. Gyarados, use Hydro Pump. Misty orders, but the paralyzed atrocious Pokemon cannot move due to the effects of static. "Now use Discharge." Ash says to the electric Pokemon, who then becomes surrounded by electricity and unleashes it upon the atrocious Pokemon, which results in it being knocked out. Gyarados is unable to battle the winner as Elekid. The referee says, "Misty must be getting tense, she only has 3 left and Ash still has all 6 of his Pokemon left," May says. Misty, looking extremely peeved, pulls out her 4th Pokeball, hoping this one can defeat one of Ash's Pokemon. She then yells, "Blastoise, I choose you." And in a flash the shellfish Pokemon comes out and yells, "Blastoise." "Whoa, a Blastoise." Ash says, seeing Misty has acquired a Blastoise in the years since she became gym leader, but still knowing Blastoise had a disadvantage against electric types, stood confident and says to Elekid, "Use Thunder Punch." Elekid's fist then generates electricity and prepares to punch Blastoise, but Misty then holds out her hand and says, "Protect." Blastoise then generates a blue force field around itself. And Elekid then bounces back after E's Thunder Punch collided with Protect. "Now use Hyper Beam." Misty commands the shellfish Pokemon, who obeys its mistress and unleashes a red beam which hits Elekid and throws it in the water. Fainted Elekid is unable to battle the winner as Blastoise. The referee proclaims. Ash then recalls Elekid and says, "Thanks, Elekid," and turns to Pikachu, "Pikachu, you're up," and he replies with a Pika, and he jumps in on the battlefield. "This should be interesting," Misty says, eager to see if Pikachu has learned new attacks over the last 3 years. "Use Volt Tackle." Ash says to his starter Pokemon, who then runs toward Blastoise and is surrounded by an aura of pure electricity and hits Blastoise in the stomach, causing a great deal of damage to the shellfish Pokemon, but doesn't defeat it, and Misty then says, "Use Ice Beam." Blastoise then shoots a blue beam of ice at the mouse Pokemon, who gets hit by the beam and thrown around the battlefield and finally into the water. Fainted and quickly runs back to Ash. Pikachu is unable to battle Blastoise as the winner. The referee proclaims, "Now when it comes to a number of remaining Pokemon, it's an even 50-50 and Ash soon pulls out a Pokeball which contains a Pokémon that will truly surprise Misty. Ivysaur, I choose you. And in a flash the seed Pokémon is unleashed and yells, Ivysaur. What? Misty says AF. Tear, seeing Ivysaur, recognizing it as Ash's Bulbasaur who had decided never to evolve many years ago. I see Ash's Bulbasaur evolved, Scott says, recognizing Bulbasaur from Ash's frontier battle with Pyramid King Brandon, in which the seed Pokémon was able to defeat Brandon's Dusclops with a powerful Solar Beam attack. Use Sleep Powder. Ash commands the seed Pokémon to do and it obeys and unleashes. He's a green powder, putting Blastoise to sleep and making it more vulnerable to attacks. Now use Solar Beam while it's down, Ash says to Ivysaur, who soon begins to absorb sunlight and unleashes the CK on the shellfish Pokémon, causing it to faint. Blastoise is unable to battle Ivysaur as the winner. The referee proclaims. Now Misty looks extremely angry after losing 4 of her Pokémon to Asha. ND pulls out one that might have a good chance against Ivysaur. Kingdra, I choose you. Misty yells out and throws a Pokeball in the air, unleashing the dragon Pokémon, who yells out, King. This cool. DB tough for Ash. Even though Kingdra is still a water type, it's also a dragon type, Max says, knowing about type disadvantages. Use Razor Leaf. Ash says to Ivysaur to do, who obeys and unleashes several razor sharp leaves that come out of his bulb, which are flying right towards Kingdra, and Misty then smiles and says, dodge it and use Dragon Breath. Kingdra then dodges the razor leaf attack and unleashes a translucent beam upon Ivysaur, knocking him out in one shot. Ivysaur is unable to battle the winner as Kingdra. The referee proclaims. Scott, observing the battle closely, says, Ash has improved since I last saw him. Let's just see if it's enough to beat that Kingdra, Scott, Max says. Ash then recalls Ivysaur back to his Pokeball and pulls out another and throws it in the air and yells, Torterra, I choose you. And in a flash the continent Pokémon is unleashed and yells, Torterra. Misty then holds out her hand, use Dragon Breath. Ash then does the same motion, use Hyper Beam. The TWO Pokémon obey their trainers and unleashes a translucent beam and a red beam, and both collide, causing a reaction that knocks both Pokémon out. Both Pokémon are unable to battle, the referee proclaims. Misty and Ash then recall their fainted Pokémon back to their Pokeballs, and Misty pulls out her last one, hoping she could beat Ash's 2 remaining Pokémon. She then throws it in the air and yells, Lantern, I choose you. And in a flash the light Pokémon is unleashed. May then pulls out her Pokédex. Lantern, the light Pokémon in the evolved form of Chinchou. The light it emits is so bright that it can illuminate the sea's surface from a depth of over 3 miles. Ash, knowing it would be a bad idea to send out Pidgeot, so he pulls out his last Pokeball, his last hope. He then throws it in the air and says, Seismitoad, I choose you. And in a flash the vibration Pokémon is unleashed and says in a deep voice, Seismitoad. Everyone in the crowd looks amazed and shocked at the sight of this unfamiliar Pokémon from the Unova region. Well, what Pokémon is that? Scott asks, shocked at the sight of the vibration Pokémon. It's called a Seismitoad. Ash caught it while he was in the Unova region. Axe says, now that you mention it, I've heard that place somewhere. Scott says, it's far away from the other regions and the Pokémon there can only be seen there. May adds, remembering what Ash told them. I don't care where this Pokémon is from. Lantern, use Thunder Full Blast. Misty yells in an extremely aggravated tone. Lantern then does as its mistress commands and unleashes a large amount of electricity onto Seismitoad, who just stands there and unaffected and blinks several times. Wait, it's not working. Misty asks herself, surprised the attack didn't work, and Ash then says, it didn't work because Seismitoad is a water and ground type. Now use Mud Shot. Ash says to the vibration Pokémon, who unleashes blobs of mud onto Lantern that does some damage due to it being part electric type. Now use Drain Punch. On Ash's orders, the vibration Pokémon, whose fist glows green, and punches Lantern and drains its energy, and Misty watches in horror as her last Pokémon falls down into the water, fainted. Lantern is unable to battle the winner as Seismitoad. The victor is Ash from Pallet Town. The referee proclaims after Ash, who has now wiped out all of Misty's Pokémon. Misty then recalls Lantern, now looking sad after her defeat at the hands of her old friend Ash. Later that day, Misty presents Ash the Cascade Badge with a visibly sad look and walks away, and May says, Misty looks kinda sad. Then Scott says, "It's hard losing a match to an old friend." Ash then turns to Scott with a surprised face and says, "Scott, what are you doing here?" Scott then replies with, "Visiting my sister mostly. I come here sometimes to see if there are any trainers worthy for the battle frontier." Watching from building using binoculars, Cassidy and Butch spot Ash and the group and contact Giovanni, Sir Ease. Here, Butch says and Giovanni smiles now knowing Ash's location. "Obtain the fossil reviver first then deal with Ketchum." He orders them and the three reply with, "Sir." And this ends their communication. With Team Rocket's plot to steal the fossil reviver thickens, our heroes will have to be ready for what they have up their sleeves. Stay tuned. Ash and the group left the Pokemon Center in the morning. To go to the research facility to see if Ash's dome fossil has been revived into the extinct Pokemon Kabuto. "It's been about 24 hours, so I think your Kabuto is revived by now," Norman said, thinking how long it has been since his eldest son put the fossil in the reviver. The group then enters the research facility and Derek welcomes them. "The fossil was just revived, come this way," Derek says, leading them the reviver chamber. Derek then presses a button which opens one of the revivers and after some steam clears a Kabuto crawls out. "Whoa, a Kabuto," Max says, amazed at the sight of the shellfish Pokemon. Dawn then pulls out her Pokédex. Kabuto, the shellfish Pokemon. This Pokemon lived in ancient times. On rare occasions, it has been discovered as a living fossil. "Whoa, that's awesome," Ash says. He then pulls out an empty Pokeball which he then throws on top of the shellfish Pokemon, which then wobbles and blinks several times and then halts and sparkles fly off, confirming its capture. Ash then picks it up and says, "Enjoy, I caught a Kabuto." Back at the Cerulean Gym, Misty sits on the edge of the gym's battlefield with her legs in the water, feeling a little crushed after her defeat against her old friend Ash, in which his Seismito defeated her Lantern with just a mud shot and drain punch attack. Azumarill, Misty's Azumarill who had evolved from her Marill weeks ago, says Tree Ing to cheer its trainer up. "I'm fine Azumarill, it's nothing," Misty says, trying not to seem depressed. Ash then goes back out to Route 25 to train with his Pokemon, including newly obtained Kabuto Sin. His next gym battle is with the leader of the Saffron City Gym, Sabrina, whom he helped regain her sanity years ago. Ash then unleashes Kabuto from its Pokeball and May also pulls out a Pokeball R. Edie to help Ash's new Pokemon train. Snorlax take the stage. May says and throws a Pokeball, and in a flash the sleeping Pokemon comes out with and says, "Snur." "Whoa, Munchlax evolved," Ash says. Rico Nizing Snorlax is the Pokemon that was once May's Munchlax, whom she caught during their time in Hoenn. Use Focus Punch. May commands the sleeping Pokemon to do, whose fists soon glow white and is out to hit Kabuto, but the shellfish Pokemon jumps out of the way just in time and Snorlax hits the ground instead. Kabuto use Mega Drain. Ash commands the shellfish Pokemon to do, who obeys and sinks its claws in the ground, and soon vines wraps around Snorlax and begins absorbing Snorlax's energy. "So far it's looking like Kabuto is a pretty strong Pokemon," Norman says, observing the battle betway Ash's newly obtained Kabuto and his daughter Snorlax. Kabuto then finishes absorbing Snorlax's energy and the sleeping Pokemon falls down to the ground fainted. Snorlax return, May says, recalling her fainted Pokemon to its Pokeball. Suddenly the group hears a scream from a distance. "That sounds like Derek," Max says, recognizing his brother's voice. Derek is then seen running at fast speeds over to the group. "The facility has been robbed," Derek says while panting after running so fast. "What?" Ash asks, shocked by what Derek says. Soon after catching his breath, Derek, Ash and the group ran to the research facility, which is covered with police tape and police officers everywhere, and an officer, Jenny, comes up to Derek. "Mr. Haruka, it seems that whoever stole the fossil reviver left no trace," she explains to Derek. "The fossil reviver?" Ash says, shocked. The Jenny then led them to the fossil reviver chamber to find one of the revivers gone. "How could anyone move something that big without being seen?" Dawn asks, shocked, and Piplup backs her up with a, "Piplup, that will be hard to figure out. They took out the security cams before they came in, so they must be professionals." Officer Jenny explains to the coordinator from Sinnoh. Derek then pulls out something from the wall, showing the officer of the law and the group a hidden camera. "I decided to keep a camera hidden in case robbers get rid of the security cameras," Derek explains to surprised group. He then takes out the camera's memory card, inserts into his computer and plays a video showing Cassidy, Butch and Do. Mino stealing the reviver using a Machamp to remove the fossil machine and a Lunastone using Psychic to move it out the window. It's Cassidy and Butch, Don says, recognizing the duo as the ones who read to kidnap a Hippowdon back in the Sinnoh region. Ash then sees Domino and says, "It's her." Ash recognizing from his journeys in the Johto region years ago who tried to capture Mewtwo but she most likely doesn't remember the incident after Mewtwo wiped her and Giovanni's memories so they wouldn't bother him again. The third one is Domino. She's an elite Team Rocket officer. I've encountered her before. Ash explains to the everyone, "We have to find them." Jenny says, "You have no idea how right you are, officer." Derek explains, "A Pokemon is in the process of being revived and if it's revived it could do some major damage to the city," he explains. Meanwhile, Team Rocket drive a tanker truck through the city which is carrying the fossil reviver which is hidden under a tarp. Cassidy then contacts HQ, Acidita headquarters. "We have the fossil reviver," she tells the agent over the phone. "We'll meet you at the rendezvous point." The agent says, "Cassidy out," she says, ending the communication. Suddenly Hey hear a noise coming from the machine and park in an alley. Then they remove the tarp and Butch goes to the computer. The machine's saying a fossil inside is done. The Team Rocket agent says then the reviver opens and smoke is unleashed, and when it clears the three agents stand shocked to see the ancient flying and rock-type Pokemon Aerodactyl. "It's an Aerodactyl," Cassidy says, seeing the fossil Pokemon who soon flies out of the machine. Sableye use mean look. Cassidy orders the Darkness Pokemon to do, but before it could, Aerodactyl uses Roar which sends Sableye back into its Pokeball. The T was unexpected, Domino says after seeing the fossil Pokemon escaping. Cassidy, Butch. The trio hears a voice and turn to see Ash and Pikachu who are blocking their entrance. "Not you again, Cassie," Dai says, recognizing Ash as the trainer they encounter every once in a while. Ash then pulls out a Pokeball and throws it in the air and says, "Swellow use air slash." Swellow obeys its trainer's command and puts its wings together and generates a blue energy ball and fires it at the rockets which sends them flying across the alley. "You little bastard," Domino says, who gets up and throws a Pokeball unleashing a Manectric who yells, "Manectric." Ash then pulls out his Pokédex. Manectric, the discharge Pokemon and the evolved form of Electrike. It discharges electricity from its mane. It Atesh a thundercloud overhead to drop lightning bolts. Fire Fang. The peeved elite officer barks at the discharge Pokemon whose mouth becomes surrounded by flames and bites down on Swellow causing it pain, and when Manectric releases Swellow it becomes paralyzed. Manectric's ability must be static but Swellow's is. Ash thinks when suddenly Swellow's eyes and body glows red. "What's happening?" Butch says, "It was a mistake paralyzing Swellow Domino because Swellow's ability is Guts." Ash says knowing Guts raises the power of attacks when the Pokemon has a status problem. "Now Hyper Beam," Ash says to the Swallow Pokemon who soon generates a powerful red beam which hits Manectric and sends it flying, hitting Domino, making the two hit a dumpster, knocking them both unconscious. "Mighty Enna, show the twerp what you're made of," Butch says, who then throws a Pokeball which unleashes the Bite Pokemon who roars upon being unleashed. Houndoom, rip him to pieces, Cassidy says with a vicious tone, who then throws a Pokeball which unleashes the Dark Pokemon who yells, "Houndoom." Upon being sent out, Gabite, I choose, but before Ash could finish, Max says, who is behind Ash, says, "Beedrill use Pin Missile. Gallade use Close Combat." Soon the Poison Bee Pokemon stingers glow white and shoot several missiles at Mighty Enna, being super effective due to it being a dark type, and Gallade begins to attack Houndoom fiercely. That Gallade is it? Ash asks himself, then realizes that Max's Gallade is most likely the injured Ralts Max helped during their adventures in Hoenn some years ago, and Max had kept his promise of coming back for it when he was a trainer. After the two dark types are defeated by Max's strategy of type advantages, he asks, "Ready to surrender?" Suddenly Butch and Cassidy hear the clicking of guns and turn to Jenny, pointing a police-issued gun at them with several officers behind her. "I would if I were you," she says, holding her gun ready to shoot if the duo tries anything. Back in Cerulean City, Aerodactyl flies through the skies and unleashes a flamethrower attack onto a fruit stand, destroying it, which frightens the citizens around it. Misty looks out the door of the GY. M to see Aerodactyl using Hyper Beam from a distance and runs towards it ready to fight the fossil Pokémon to prevent it from causing any more damage to her hometown. Aerodactyl continues to fly through the sky and suddenly is struck by a Thunderbolt and Magical Leaf attack, which are revealed to have came from Ash's Pikachu and Bayleaf, who are trying to stop the fossil Pokémon's rampage through Cereal. Ian, the computer, says Aerodactyl has a range of different attacks to use, so this could be tough. Derek explains to Ash. That's good to know because I'm gonna catch that Aerodactyl. Ash says with a determined look, that could tough. Ash, I hope you have a plan, Derek says to his sister's companion. Aerodactyl then uses a Hyper Beam attack on another fruit stand, destroying it seconds then suddenly. While it was recharging, is hit by an Ice Beam attack, which is revealed to have come from a Golduck who belongs to Misty. Psyduck evolved. Ash says shocked to see Psyduck had evolved in the last few years and appears to be void of its chronic headaches. He then pulls out his Pokédex. Golduck, the duck Pokémon and the evolved form of Psyduck. It appears by waterways at dusk. It may use telekinetic powers if its forehead glows mysteriously. Pikachu use Thunder Wave. Ash says to the mouse Pokémon, who unleashes a charge of electricity onto Aerodactyl, paralyzing it, making it unable to move. Bayleaf use Magical Leaf. Ash says to the leaf Pokémon, who unleashes multiple green leaves onto the paralyzed fossil Pokémon, who then falls to the ground fainted. Good job, Bayleaf, Ash says to Bayleaf, who responds with, Bay. Suddenly she begins to glow and everyone watches in awe, and Ash says, Bayleaf's evolving. Bayleaf beings to grow in size as her head leaf is replaced with two stamen-like antennae, and the leaves around its neck begin to shrink in size and the glowing halts, revealing Bayleaf in her new form as a Meganium. Bayleaf's now Meganium. Ash then pulls out his Pokédex. Meganium, the herb Pokémon and the evolved form of Bayleaf. Its breath has the fantastic ability to revive dead plants and flowers. That's awesome. And now, Ash says, and then pulls out an empty Pokeball. Go Pokeball. He then throws it on the fainted Aerodactyl, which absorbs it and drops on the ground and wobbles and blinks several times and then halts and sparkles fly off, confirming its capture, and the N instantly teleports to Professor Oak's lab back in Pallet Town. Several hours later, Caroline and Norman prepare to board a boat back to the Hoenn region. Well, Ash, I've got to get back to Petalburg. There are probably a crowd of challengers by now, Norman says to Ash. Chansey says, eager to return to Petalburg. Soon the three boards the boat and soon are on their way back to the Hoenn reg. Ion and Ash and others say their goodbyes to Misty and Derek. Now with a newly evolved Meganium on his side along with the ancient Pokémon Kabuto and Aerodactyl, Ash is sure to have a good chance with his next gym challenge against Sabrina. Stay tuned. Meanwhile, back at Team Rocket headquarters, Giovanni sits at his desk waiting to hear back from Cassidy. Butch and Domino and his secretary enters the office. Sir, I regret to inform you that the agents Cassidy, Butch and Domino were arrested in Cerulean City, she explains, frightened of what Giovanni might say. He slams his fist down on the table in anger. This boy is becoming a problem. Have there been any sightings of him? He asks. No sir, not since him and his companions left Cerulean. The secretary replies, send Annie and Oakley to follow him and report on his movements. He tells his secretary, yes sir, she says, and leaves the room. After stopping Team Rocket from escaping with a fossil reviver from the Cerulean City research facility, as H and friends are now en route to Saffron City, the site of both Ash's third gym battle rematch and Dawn's first Kanto Pokemon contest. Okay, the Pokegear says the fastest way to Saffron City is to go through Route 5 inches, Ash says, looking at his Pokegear for directions. So Ash, we never met Sabrina when we were in Saffron. What's she like exactly? Max asks, curious. When I first met, she was on brink of schizophrenia, but with the help of a haunter she got back to normal. Ash explains, remembering what happened several years ago. She gave me the Marsh badge after I helped get back to sanity, but this time I'll earn it after beating her in a battle. Ash says, determined to beat the psychic-type gym leader. Piplup. Piplup calls out, noticing something in the way, and the group turns to where he is inting and look to see it is an Abra sitting on the ground sleeping. An Abra, Max says, and May pulls out his Pokédex. Abra, the Psy Pokémon, if it decides to teleport randomly, it evokes the illusion that it has created copies of itself. Whoa, I'm definitely catching this one, Dawn says, amazed at the Psy Pokémon's appearance. And I have just the poke ball. She then pulls out a poke ball that's blue. Ian has yellow stripes in an X shape. Go quick ball. Dawn says and throws the poke ball on Abra, which absorbs it, which then wobbles and blinks several times and halts, confirming its capture, and sparks fly off. Yes. Dawn says, I've heard of quick balls, they can catch Pokemon who are pretty fast. Ash explains to the others, Abra, come on out. Dawn says and Abra is unleashed from its poke ball. Now we can get to Saffron quicker. Abra use teleport. Dawn says to her new Pokemon, whose body then glows multicolored, and the group along with Abra are teleported away instantly. Soon they are teleported out, but to find it is not Saffron City but a majestic forest. This isn't Saffron City, Ash says, who pulls out his Pokegear and checks his location and with a grim look says, oh my god, we're not even Kanto. What? The group asks, then where are we? May asks Ash, who shows them the Pokegear showing a map of Unova. We're in the Unova region. He yells, which echoes through the forest, causing several Pidove to fly away startled. At Professor Juniper's lab at least a mile away, she then hears Ash's echoing yell and says, Ash. Recognizing the voice of the boy whose Pokemon he stored at his lab just 2 years ago. But why did Abra send us here and not Saffron City? Dawn asks. Abra must be a young Pokemon, so its skill with teleport must not be so good, Max hypothesizes based on what has just occurred. According to the Pokegear map, we're on Route 3. I can visit Sillin in Striaton City. Ash says after looking at the Pokegear's map setting, who's Sillin? Max asks. Sillin is one of the 3 lead Ers at the Striaton City gym. The others are his brothers Chili and Cress. They give the trio badge to anyone who can defeat them, Ash explains. Suddenly a Blitzel jumps out of the bushes and the group turns to the electrified Pokemon. It's a Blitzel, Ash says, and Max pulls out his Pokédex. Blitzel, the electrified Pokemon. When thunderclouds cover the sky, it will appear. It can catch lightning with its mane and store electricity. I'm defiantly catching this one, Ash says, and throws a poke ball in the air, unleashing Gabite, who yells, Gabite. Ash then motions his hand to Blitzel. Gabite use Draco Meteor. Ash says to the cave Pokemon, who obeys his trainer's command, charges up an orange sphere in his mouth, which goes into the air and meteors land on Blitzel, knocking it out in seconds. Ash then pulls out an empty poke ball, throws it and says, go poke ball. The poke ball then lands on Blitzel and absorbs the electrified Pokemon, and it blinks and wobbles several times and halts, confirming its capture, and sparks fly off it and then shrinks down, unable to be opened. Wait, why didn't it teleport to Professor Oak's lab? Ash. Max asks. Unova is too far away to make a connection, but I do know one place I can send it, Ash says, and then puts the poke ball containing his newly captured Blitzel into his backpack, and the group continues to walk to Striaton City. Ash and the group are out to enter Striaton City when an Audino walks by looking happy and says, Audino. Ash turns to the hearing Pokemon and says, hey, an Audino. May pulls out her Pokédex, curious about this Pokemon. Audino, the hearing Pokemon. It touches others with the feelers on its ears, using the sound of their heartbeats to tell how they are feeling. I'm defiantly catching this one, Pikachu Thunder Wave. Ash says to Pikachu, who sends off electricity which causes sparks to appear around Audino, leaving it paralyzed, and then throws a poke ball on it, which absorbs it and wobbles and blinks several times and halts it, confirming its capture, and sparks fly off, and then the poke ball shrinks, unable to be opened. Ash then picks up Audino's poke ball and puts it in his pack for safekeeping, and the group continues on to Striaton City. With a Blitzel and Audino added to his roster of Pokemon, Ash and friends now prepare to enter Striaton City to meet up with Ash's old friend Cillian. Stay tuned to see what happens. When we last saw our heroes, they were teleported to the faraway Unova region by Dawn's newly captured Abra, who had the intent of using Abra's teleport to get to Saffron City, site of Ash's next gym rematch and Dawn's first Kanto region Pokemon contest. Now Ash and the group intends to meet up with Ash's traveling companion from the Unova region, Sillin. Ash and his friends walk through the streets of Striaton. To Ash, it feels like it was only yesterday he had come to the city and earned his first Unova League gym badge, the trio, and defeating 2 of the 3 gym leaders, Sillin and his brothers Cress and Chili. There's a place called the Dreamyard near here. It used to be a research facility used to research a substance called Dream Mist, which was released by a Pokemon named Musha. RNA, Ash explains, and Dawn pulls out her Pokédex and looks up Musharna. Musharna, the drowsing Pokemon and the evolved form of Muna. With the mist from its forehead, it can create shapes of things from dreams it has eaten. Embor use flame charge. A female voice calls out which Ash immediately recognizes and turns around to see the Mega Fire Pig Pokémon surrounded by fire colliding with a Herdier knocking it out instantly. May then pulls out her Pokédex. Embor the Mega Fire Pig Pokémon. It has mastered fast and powerful fighting moves. It grows a beard of fire. Whose trainer does that Embor belong to? Max asks Ash. Ash turns around to see the owner of the Embor battling is none other than Bianca, the girl he encountered multiple times during his travels through the Unova region. Ca then runs over to Ash and says, "Ash, it's you." Embor looks down and Pikachu and says, "Embor," most likely telling the mouse Pokémon it's good to see him after a year. "Ever since you left Unova they've been battling more and more and I've won at least 20 of them and..." Suddenly Bianca is cut off when a cloud appears before her and she falls to the ground asleep, which reveals the sprayer is a Vileplume owned by Max. "What have told you about doing that?" Max asks Vileplume, who simply responds by saying, "Plume." At least an hour later Bianca wakes up in a Pokémon Center and asks, "Hey, who did that?" "My Vileplume did that, sorry." Max tells her, "No problem, to be honest that was pretty nice, I enjoy a good nap." Bianca says and Vileplume is tempted to use another sleep powder but Max recalls it before it can. "Hey Ash, I just had a great idea, we should have a battle." Bianca says, "Okay great, I just need to do one thing before I do that," Ash says. Simisage use seed bomb. Sil and the Stree. Asian City Gym leader Ash traveled with during his journey says to the Thorn Monkey Pokémon, who unleashes multiple white orbs from its mouth colliding with a challenger's Herdier, instantly knocking it out. "I'd recommend trying to improve your recipe for battle," Silen says to the challenger, who recalls Herdier and exits the gym. "It's good to see you're still in talking about recipes, old friend," Ash says. Ays and Silen looks up to see him leaning on the door with Pikachu on his shoulder. Ash, Silen says, recognizes his old traveling companion immediately. Back at the Pokémon Center, Ash explains to Lan of how him and the group came to be in the Unova region and of his battle he plans to have with Bianca at the Battle Club. "A battle with Bianca, this should be interesting, but I must warn you, Ash. Her Pokémon have gotten stronger and she's improved her battle strategy since you last saw her," Silen explains to Ash. "Well, so have I. Since then I've already got a good strategy to beat her," Ash replies. Ash then stands up. "It's time," he says, and begins to walk over to the Battle Club with Silen in tow. Soon Ash and Bianca find each other on opposite sides of the Battle Club's battleground, the BA. TTLE between Ash and Bianca is about to begin. Each trainer will have the usage of 4 Pokémon each. Substitutions are allowed on both sides. Begin. Don George announces. "Escavalier, let's go." Bianca announces and throws a Poke Ball, which unleashes the Cavalry Pokémon, who responds with an Escavalier. May then pulls out her Pokédex. Escavalier, the cavalry Pokémon and the evolved form of Carablast. They fly around at high speed, striking with their pointed spears. Even when in trouble, they face opponents bravely. "Elekid, I choose you," Ash says, throwing a Poke Ball, which unleashes the Electric Pokémon, who responds with an Eli. Bianca then pulls out her Pokédex, curious about this Pokémon. Elekid, the electric Pokémon. A weak electric current flows between its horns. Sticking a hand there shocks the unwary. Escavalier use Fury attack, Bianca says, and the cavalry Pokémon's lances glow white and repeatedly jabs Elekid with them, but the electric Pokémon simply picks himself afterwards, not planning on giving up just yet. Elekid Thunder Wave, Ash says to Elekid, who unleashes electricity onto Axelgar, leaving it paralyzed. That was a good move Ash made by having Elekid use too. Ender Wave to paralyze Axelgar, now it will be tougher for it to move, Silen remarks. Escavalier use Energy Ball, Bianca says to the cavalry Pokémon, but does not use the attack due to the fact that it is paralyzed and cannot move. Fire Punch, Ash says to Elekid, whose hand becomes surrounded by fire, and punches Escavalier, knocking the cavalry Pokémon with one hit. Escavalier is unable to battle He winner is Elekid. Don George announces and Elekid smiles and begins to glow as everyone watches in awe. Elekid's evolving, Ash says, knowing what this is after seeing it many times. Soon Elekid begins to grow in size and his horns turn into antennas, and soon the glowing halts and show him in his new form as an Electabuzz, who yells out, "Electa!" Bianca then pulls out her Pokédex. Electabuzz the T. Thunderbolt Pokémon in the evolved form of Elekid. It windmills its arms to slightly boost its punches. Foes have been known to escape in the meantime. Emboar, let's go, Bianca says, sending out the Mega Fire Pig Pokémon, who says, Emboar. Even with his newly evolved Electabuzz, can Ash defeat his old rival Bianca? Stay tuned and find out. Ash's 4-on-4 battle with Bianca began to regressive start when Ash's Elekid defeating Bianca's Escavalier and evolved into Electabuzz afterwards, but will that be enough to defeat Bianca and the rest of her Pokémon? Electabuzz use Thunder, Ash says too. The electric Pokémon, and at his trainer's command Electabuzz begins to generate electricity from its horns on its head and fires a blast of electricity at Emboar, reducing his health severely. Ash's Electabuzz is one strong Pokémon at best, Sylin says, observing the match carefully. He really is. He was able to beat a Gyarados when he was still an Elekid with only a few attacks. Sylin, Max replies to the Pokémon connoisseur's statement. Emboar return, Bianca says, trying to be smart about this. Now Cinccino come out. Bianca says, unleashing the Scarf Pokémon, who yells out, Cinccino. May then pulls out her Pokédex. Cinccino, the Scarf Pokémon in the evolved form of Minccino. Their white fur is coated in a special oil that makes it easy for them to deflect attacks. Electabuzz return, Ash saw. YS recalling Electabuzz to his Pokeball and pulls out another, Gabite, I choose you. He says, unleashing the cave Pokémon, who yells out, Gabite. Bianca then pulls out her Pokédex. Gabite, the cave Pokémon in the evolved form of Gible. It loves sparkly things. It seeks treasures in caves and hoards the loot into its nest. A dragon-type Iris would love that, Sylin says, knowing about Iris's love for dragon-type Pokémon. Cinccino use Attract. Bianca says to the Scarf Pokémon, who sends off an array of hearts at Gabite, which hits him but has no effect. What Attract didn't work, Bianca says. T didn't work because my Gabite is male, so is Cinccino. Ash points out the bubbly blonde, Dragon Rush. Ash says to Gabite, who at his trainer's command charges at Cinccino with great speed, and as he do, his head glows blue and his body is enveloped and collides with Cinccino, knocking him out with one shot. Cinccino is unable to battle the winner as Gabite, Don George declares. Cinccino return, Bianca says, a bit ticked. Bianca is looking a little aggravated. Sylin says, what will she do next? She only has 2 Pokémon left. Don asks, Mienshao come out. She says, unleashing the martial arts Pokémon. May then pulls out her Pokédex, curious about this Pokémon. Mienshao, the martial arts Pokémon. It wields the fur on its arms like a whip. Its arm attacks come with such rapidity that they cannot even be seen. Use Aura Sphere. Bianca says to Mienshao, who generates a sphere of aura and throws it at Gabite, which does significant damage to the cave Pokémon but not too much. Gabite use Dragon Pulse. Ash says to Gabite, who at his trainer's command generates a teal sphere and unleashes it upon Mienshao, which knocks it out in one hit. Mienshao is unable to battle the winner as Gabite. Don George declares, Emboar use Flame Charge. Bianca yells out, unleashing Emboar, whose body becomes surrounded by fire and soon charges at Gabite. Gabite use Dig. Ash says, and the cave Pokémon Burr Rose underground and Emboar stops in his tracks. What where is he? Bianca asks, thinking where Gabite is. Suddenly the cave Pokémon comes up and attacks Emboar, and the Mega Fire Pig Pokémon falls down. Rom the attack fainted. Emboar is unable to battle the winner as Gabite. The winner of this battle is Ash, Don George declares. Emboar return, Bianca says, frustrated at the fact she lost the match, and Ash only had to use 2 of his Pokémon to beat 4 of hers and walks off angrily. Back in Kanto, Team Rocket spies Annie and Oakley report back to Giovanni, sir, we've had no signs of the boy. It's Ike's vanished off the face of Kanto, Annie says to her boss. Strange, report back when you have something, he replies, sir. The two say together as they end the conversation with Giovanni. Back in Unova, Ash talks to Professor Juniper over a video phone. I thought you were in the Unova region, Ash. I could hear you scream all the way from Nuvma town, she says to the young trainer from Pallet town. Yeah, I've gotta work on how loud I talk, so anyway I'm sending over Autono and Blitzel until I can find a way to get back to Kanto, Ash says to the Pokemon professor. Of course Ash, if you catch a Nymore just send them over here, Juniper says, and Ash soon transports the 2 Pokemon over to her research lab for safekeeping. Piplup use Whirlpool. Dawn says to the penguin Pokemon whose body glow. WS bluish-white and opens his beak and a huge whirlpool begins to form and throws it in the air, now Mamoswine Ice Shard. Dawn says to the twin-tusked Pokemon who generates a glowing light blue ball of ice and launches it at the whirlpool freezing it. Now Quilava use Flamethrower. Dawn says and the volcano Pokemon breaths fire onto the ice whirlpool turning it to water, now Abra use Psychic. WN says to the Psy Pokemon who uses Psychic to hold the water. Now Lopunny use Ice Beam. Dawn says to the rabbit Pokemon who freezes the water, now Togekiss use Sky Attack. Dawn says to the Jubilee Pokemon whose body surrounded by white aura and it flies at the frozen water and starts doing this multiple times until the ice is turned into a sphere of ice which Abra then gently puts on the ground. D and Lopunny freezes it to keep it in place. Done. Got the whole thing on video, Max says holding a video camera recording the whole performance. You're the great Dawn, May says to her friend from TH. Sinnoh region, let's just hope I can do an appeal like that with just one Pokemon, Dawn says a little unsure. You can, and you will, May says leaning in on Dawn and kissing her on the cheek causing Dawn's cheeks to turn red. Just try your best, she says and walks off blowing a kiss her way leaving Dawn a bit embarrassed by the red cheeks and love struck. Well Sylin, we have to be on our way, Ash says to his old friend. It's been good seeing you Ash also, Sylin remarks, Pika Pie, Pikachu replies. Wait Ash. Bianca runs towards him, I want to come with you guys, she says, wait does your dad know? Ash asks, my mom knows and she'll tell him when I tell her when we're far enough away, she replies. I guess why would you want to come with us? Ash asks, I want to see what other regions. Like Kanto is like up close and personal, Bianca explains with big eyes, okay but we're not going back to Kanto just yet, Ash says. Yeah I mean we have 2 weeks before my contest in Saffron's IT. NK we can enjoy Unova for that long and when it's almost time we'll catch a plane ride, she says thinking if they use Abra's teleport they could end up somewhere farther like Russia or maybe even the moon. Okay then let's go then, she says running off at fast rates towards the road. That's Bianca for you, Ash remarks. With Bianca on the team now Ash and friends are sure to have some comic relief on their team as they enjoy some time in the Unova region. Stay tuned and see what happens next. Our heroes now enjoy some time off in the wondrous faraway Unova region where they plan on visiting beautiful sights before returning to Kanto for Ash's third Kanto rematch and Dawn's first Pokemon contest. According to the map we're on Route 3 inches Ash says looking at his Pokegears map. Ash then spot S.A. Purloin ahead licking its paw only this one was different than a normal one it was a shiny one. Ash knew this due to its colors being gray blue and purple instead of normal purple and pink. Everyone get down, he says and they duck down behind a bush. May pulls out her Pokédex curious about the unfamiliar Pokemon. Purloin the devious Pokemon. They steal from people for fun, but their victims can't help but forgive them. Their deceptively cute act is perfect. It sounds like a thief, Dawn comments on the Pokédex entry, and it's a shiny Pokemon, Max says seeing its color is different. Then the Pokédex image, I like a challenge cause I'm going to catch, Ash says pulling out a Pokeball ready to catch the shiny devious Pokemon. Pikachu let's make this fast use Thunder Wave. Ash say. S to Pikachu who fires a jolt of electricity at Purloin but the devious Pokemon notices this and jumps out of the way instead the jolt hits a passing Pidove which paralyzes the pigeon Pokemon. Sorry about that, Ash says to the Pidove and May then pulls out a Pokeball and throws it on the paralyzed pigeon Pokemon and the Pokeball then wobbles and blinks several times and halts then sparkles FL. Y off the Pokeball confirming its capture. Yes. May says in joy of catching her first Unova Pokemon picking up the Pokeball, which shrinks due to her having 6 Pokemon on her current team, Pearl. Oin got away, Ash says a little disappointed by this but not that much knowing this has happened before and is used to it. Suddenly a flock of Pidove arrives angered by this and Ash smiles and pulls OU. TA Pokeball unleashing his Torkoal who unleashes smoke from his back and nostrils and yells, Torkoal. Torkoal use smokescreen. Ash says to the coal Pokemon who obeys and unleashes a black smoke, which surrounds everyone. Soon the Pidove use Gust to remove the smoke and find that the gang is gone. That was close, Max says to his friends who are now hiding next to a tree. This one looks amazing. Bianca says, pulling out her Pokédex. Torkoal, the coal Pokémon. It burns coal inside its shell for energy. It blows out black soot if it is endangered. Now that that's taken care of, I'm going to get back to finding that Purloin, Ash says, pulling out some Pokémon food, putting in a bowl and pouring it in and hiding in the bushes ready to catch it if it comes. I just need to wait, then I'll be able to catch it. Ash says, holding a Pokeball and ready to use it to capture the shiny Pokémon whenever it might come to the food bowl, and Ash then sits there for the next 20 minutes but stays there. Determined to catch Purloin, not only because of its color but because of its reflexes which would help him in battle. Suddenly the same Purloin returns and goes into the bowl and begins eating food. Ash notices this. Alright, to make my move, he says in his thoughts, and pulls out a Pokeball ready to catch the devious Pokémon. Finally, I hoped you'd show up soon, a man says, wearing a black vest and patting. Sir, I've located the target, it's here, the man says over his radio. Excellent, keep it here, I'll be there shortly. A female voice says over the radio. I know that voice, Ash says. I am. Immediately recognizing it is Pokemon Hunter Jay. You're going for a high price, kitty, Jay's henchman says when he is hit by a green cloud of dust and falls down asleep and reveals it to be Ash's Meganium Us. Ing sleep powder, come on, let's get you out of here, Ash says to Purloin, who nods in a yes motion and follows him so they can get away from Hunter Jay before she gets there. Okay, I phoned the local officer Jenny, she already picked him up, Ash says, looking around seeing none of the Jay's crew or Jay, so the group continues to walk with Purloin, who keeps close to Ash. So Ash, what's Hunter Jay like? Bia, NCA asks, not knowing who his Jay was until now. She's one of the worst I've met, maybe even at the top of the list, Ash says. Instead of just catching them in cages, she turns them to stone with a cannon of hers and keeps them in a case until they're sold, Ash says to Bianca with such contempt for the Pokemon hunter. She tried to steal Pikachu and Team Rocket's Meowth when we were in Sinnoh, Dawn says, remembering the hunter from 3 years ago. Suddenly a deerling jumps out in its winter form, brushing itself. Oh, thank Arceus, it's just a deerling, Ash says, and Dawn pulls out her Pokédex, curious about the unfamiliar Pokémon. Deerling, the season Pokémon. The turning of the seasons changes the color and scent of this Pokémon's fur. People use it to mark the seasons. I'm catching this one for sure, Ash says, pulling out a Pokeball and throws it in the air, unleashing Torkoal, who unleashes smoke from its back and nose and yells, Torkoal. Alright, Torkoal, use flamethrower, Ash says to the Coal Pokemon, who unleashes a stream of fire onto the seasoned Pokemon, weakening it, and he then pulls out a Pokeball. Now go Pokeball, he says, throwing the Pokeball on Deerling, which absorbs it and falls on the ground and wobbles and blinks 3 times and halts, and sparkles fly off, confirming its capture, and then shrinks down. Yeah, I caught a Deerling, Ash says, holding up the Pokeball in victory. When Purloin digs a Pokeball out of the trainer's backpack and presses down on the button, which absorbs the devious Pokemon, and sparkles fly off, confirming its capture, and shrinks down. Did Purloin just do what I think it did? Bianca asks. Pikachu says, confused. I guess it must like you since it wanted to go in the Pokeball willingly, Max says, knowing this kind of stuff. Ash. On says, and points down the mountain, and he sees several black vans with several of Jay's henchmen, most likely looking for Purloin. Great, they're gonna be looking for Purloin, so I need to wait until it's clear to let it out in the open, Ash says to his friends. Soon the gang makes their way to the nearest Pokemon Center, and Ash sends Deerling and Electabuzz over to Professor Juniper's lab to make room for Purloin, but until it was safe not to let it out anywhere, Hunter Jay could try and make a grab for it. I've actually heard of Hunter Jay from Professor Oak, he said he spotted her in Kanto, Professor Juniper says over the phone. I've dealt with her before, she's awful, what I wouldn't give to get my hands around her throat or turn her to stone with her own cannon, Ash says, having so much contempt for the Pokemon hunter and her methods. She can't run from the law forever, Ash, eventually she'll slip up, Juniper says, trying to reassure the young trainer. I know, but not anytime soon, I know he are too well, Professor, Ash says, remembering all those times Jay was able to escape, and was even able to escape death the last time he saw the ruthless Pokemon hunter. Ash, what's that Pokemon? May asks, pointing to a painting of a black dragon Pokemon with a generator-like tail and red eyes. That's Zekrom, he replies having met the Pokémon before, Zekrom. May asks pulling out her Pokédex and typing the Pokémon's name in. Zekrom, the deep black Pokémon. Concealing itself in lightning clouds, it flies throughout the Unova region. It creates electricity in its tail. Zekrom is one of the legendary Pokémon. It's a dragon and electric-type Pokémon, Ash explains to the group. Zekrom also played a part in Unova's creation, Ash continues on. You see, according to mythology, Unova was created by Ing the warring peoples of the land by twin heroes, Ash explains to the group, telling them the origins of the Unova region. To do this, they used a single dragon. However, the brothers started arguing over something each sought in life. The older brother sought truth and the younger brother sought ideals. Their arguments split the single dragon into Reshiram, who sided with the older brother, and Zekrom, who sided with the younger brother. Ash continues on. The two dragons begin battling, destroying the Unova region with their fire and lightning powers before disappearing, but really they had been transformed into stone orbs. Reshiram was transformed into the light stone and Zekrom turned into the dark stone. Ash continues on. Unova was eventually rebuilt though, and here we are today. Shish says, finishing the story, so how do you know all this? Dawn asks, I've met Reshiram and Zekrom when I traveled through here. Dawn, they're just as amazing in person than in legend. Ash says, remembering meeting Zekrom in Nuvma town, then in Eindhoek town. The following morning, Ash and his friends take leave from the Pokémon Center and approach the entrance to Nakreen City, where Ash acquired his Second Unova League gym badge from Lenora, the city's gym leader. This is Nakreen City, guys, so let's go. Ash says, running into the city ready to battle anyone who challenges him there. Our heroes are no on high alert with the return of Pokémon Hunter J, but this shall not stop them from enjoying battling. Stay tuned. When we last met our heroes, they learned that the ruthless Pokémon Hunter J had survived her ship crash in the Sinnoh region years ago and is now in the Unova region where our heroes are currently touring, but this does not stop them from entering Nakreen City, the place where Ash won his second Unova gym badge. Welcome to Nakreen City, guys, Ash says as his friends admire the many colorful buildings around the city. Why are all the buildings different colors? May asks Ash. It's all the city of art by some people. It was established in restored storehouses built about 100 years ago, Ash explains to the coordinator from Hoenn. The gym here is run by Lenora. The gym is located inside the museum here. Ash explains, remembering the gym from over 2 years ago when he came here to earn his second gym badge but lost but won in a rematch against the normal type gym leader Maya. While Hunter J flies in her new airship in the skies of Unova when one of her henchmen appears on the screen. Sir, we have yet to locate the purloin, the henchman reports. You better find it soon. My clients won't be happy we lose this, she says. Yes, sir, he says. Unknown to her, Ash looks at the airship from his binoculars. She's got a new ship. Where does she get this stuff? Ash asks himself. Ash, what are you looking at? Dawn asks, and he hands the binoculars over to her and she sees what he saw, Hunter J's ship. She says, recognizing it. Last time I heard of it, that thing it blew at the bottom of Lake Verity. Looks like she got a new one, Ash says and watches as the airship cloaks invisible to the human eye. I need to get her out of Unova somehow, Ash says to his friends. How are you gonna yell out and tell her you're here and you caught Purloin? Bianca asks. No, but I need to find some way to catch her. She needs to pay for what she's done to Pokemon, Ash says, having much contempt for the Pokemon hunter heeding her work because of his love for Pokemon. Pikachu says, who has as much contempt for the hunter for all the things she has done, including trying to capture Pikachu. Meanwhile, in the Nakreen City Museum, in a display case, a dark stone begins to glow bright blue. Apparently have had heard Ash from the distance about him intending to find a way to bring down Hunter J and make her pay for what she has done to Pokemon. Suddenly Lenora walks by and looks to see the dark stone, but it is now no longer glowing. It defiantly looks like the real dark stone. All value that, the normal type gym leader says, commenting on the texture and condition of the stone, and she walks away and it continues to glow. Purloin use Fury swipes, Ash says to his newly captured Pokemon whose claws grow and glow white, and slices up a piece of wood. That was good, Purloin, Ash says, congratulated Purloin on how flawlessly the wood was cut. Are you sure it's safe to have Loin out while Hunter J could be out there watching? May asks, she wouldn't do it in a place filled with people, she's too smart, she'll try and strike while we're out in the forest and vulnerable to attack, Ash says, knowing Hunter J too well. Ash, there's something on the TV you might want to see, Max says, rushing out of the Pokemon Center, and they go inside. Breaking news in Unova. There have been reports of Pokemon Hunter, who is known only as J, has been spotted in the Unova region, a reporter says on the TV. That's right, Hunter J was presumed dead 3 years ago after her airship CRA shed into Lake Verity in the Sinnoh region. Another reporter says, J was wanted by the authorities there and had committed a series of Pokemon kidnappings. She continues on, showing clips of J capturing Pokemon. Just moments ago a hiker sent us this picture of J's new airship in the sky, the first reporter says, showing a snapshot of J's airship. According to what he told the local police, he said, the ship just turned invisible after that. The female one says, all law enforcement agencies in the region have been alerted to her presence or searching for her. The female reporter continues. At least people know who she is now, Max says, watching the news channel. In other news, police made an arrest of someone working for Hunter J during the interrogating. He says he was, quote, I just got this. With her I don't know anything, but said he was tasked with capturing a shiny purloin, but when he attempted, a cloud of green dust came on him and he fell unconscious. The female reporter continues. Whenever I encountered J, her henchman would get arrested while she makes her getaway, Ash says, remembering the times when J's henchman would get arrested instead of her and she escapes. I wonder if she'll remember you, Max says. She will. She would never forget me, and neither would I with her, Ash says, having much contempt for her. In other news, the Nakreen City Museum has opened up a new exhibit today dedicating the legendary Pokemon of Unova, the female reporter says. That sounds cool, Max says, then let's go check it out, Ash says, and the group goes off to see the new exhibit in the museum. On Hunter J's airship, one of her henchmen enter the command bridge. Sir, we found out where Purloin may have gone, he says, and uploads a video of Ash training Purloin by having it use her claws. Cut the wood, and J clenches her fists in anger. Not him again, she says, recognizing Ash as he has foiled several of her plans in the past. It seems he has already captured Purloin, sir, the henchman says, and J simply looks at the screen and smiles. Wait until him and his friends are alone and then we'll strike, J says. Yes sir, he says. Back at the Nakreen City Museum, Ash and the gang fall out into the crowd of people to see the new exhibit dedicated to the legendary Pokemon of the Unova region. And here we have the display for the legendary Kami Trio, a tour guide says, showing them a painting of the Kami Trio, Tornadus, Thundurus and Landorus, along with several other items. Whoa, they look amazing, Dawn says, admiring the legendary Pokemon. They are take it from someone who's seen the M up close, Ash says to the coordinator from Sinnoh, having encountered the trio on Milos Island during his journey 2 years ago, in which Team Rocket attempted to steal the trio but thwarted. NT's display is dedicated to the legendary dragon Pokemon of Ideal's Zekrom, the tour guide says, showing them a display with several things, including a painting of Zekrom and the Dark Stone inside a case. It's the Dark Stone, Ash says, knowing what that is. Actually, Ash, it's not the real one, merely a replica, a man says, and the group looks behind and Ash recognizes the man as Haas, Lenora's husband and vice curator of the Nakreen Museum. Maybe Haas, but you've said that before about Yamask mask and it turned out to be a Yamask, Ash says, remembering that night 2 years ago. That is correct, but this one is defiantly a replica, Haas replies, pretty sure the Dark Stone in the case is replica. Our next display is dedicated to the legendary Musketeers, as the tour guide continues on, when suddenly the stone begins to glow in front of everyone. I have been wrong before, of course, Haas says, and the stone breaks out of the case and flies out of the building, and Ash and Pikachu chase after it. I need to make sure these things are replicas first, Haas says, ashamed that this has happened again. Ash and Pikachu follows the stone all the way out into the lush pinwheel forest, the place where Ash captured his Leavanny when he was a Sawaddle over 2 years ago, and he goes over to the Dark Stone, which glows ever so blue. The Great Dark Stone, Ash says, admiring the sight of the glowing stone in front of him. Soon electricity begins to form around the Dark Stone, and Ash steps back a few inches as a veil of blue energy surrounds something, and inside is a large shadow, and the veil drops revealing the legendary Pokemon Zekrom, within, whose eyes open and looks down at Ash and Pikachu and roars at them. The legendary Pokemon Zekrom. Why have you appeared before me? Ash asks the legendary D. Ragon, an electric Pokemon, who looks at him silently, and Ash realizes something. You heard me talking about Jay, didn't you? Ash asks, and Zekrom just looks at him, apparently giving Ash his answer. Those are one of my ideals, Zekrom. One of my others are to become a Pokemon master, Ash says respectfully to the legendary Pokemon, whose eyes widen at hearing that. So does this mean? Ash asks an instant. TLY realizes what's happening and smiles. Soon Ash arrives back to the group. How is with Haas? Ash, what happened? May asks, where's the stone? Haas asks, and Ash pulls out a shrunken Pokeball, giving Haas his answer. What? You captured Zekrom? Haas asks, surprised by this. Zekrom didn't really put up a fight, it didn't even try and battle me, it just let me capture it, Ash explains. Ash's Eels compelled Zekrom to allow itself to be captured. A voice comes out and they look to see it is Lenora, leader of the Nakreen City Gym. Lenora, Haas says to his wife, who had just returned from somewhere. Zekrom believes firmly in ideals. It was yours that brought it out of hibernation in its dark stone form, and it was the reason Zekrom allowed you to capture it, Lenora explains to the young trainer. I knew that, Lenora. I've encountered Zekrom before, I've heard the legends about him in Reshiram. Ash replies and looks at the Pokeball. Wait until Professor Oak or Juniper hears this, Max says to his friend, amazed by what Pokemon Ash just acquired. I know everyone I know will be surprised. I can only imagine the face Trip might have when he sees this, Ash says. Little does Ash know Jay is watching the whole conversation from her airship, and she smiles. This should be a fun hunt, she says, intending on capturing Zekrom. Ash has achieved great with his capture of the legendary Pokemon Zekrom, but at the same time the ruthless Pokemon hunter Jay now intends to capture the legendary dragon Pokemon. Will she succeed? Stay tuned and find out. Somewhere back in Kanto, in a prison facility in the yard, Jesse, James and Meowth stand outest in the sun with other inmates of the prison. So when is the boss sending someone in to break us out? Meowth asks. It's been 3 months, I doubt he's sending anyone to help get us out, James says, knowing Giovanni won't risk being found and incarcerated. Jesse, James, Butch says, walking in. All right, listen Biff, we don't have time for yours and Sadie's insults, Meowth says. It's Butch. He yells and a guard notices this and he just lowers his voice. Listen, usually me and Cassidy are able to escape out of these hellholes no problem, but this one is a little tougher, so we might need your help getting out of this one, Butch explains quietly. Are you saying you guys actually need our help? Jesse asks, surprised. Yes, but we're doing this as fellow Rockets. Remember that we're not friends. Cassidy told me to tell you that, Jesse, Butch explains. So when are planning to break out? Meowth asks. Tonight we get out of here and back to HQ, Butch explains. Hey. What you four talking about? A guard asks, holding his gun. And nothing, Butch says, and the guard walks off. Let's talk about this somewhere more private, Butch says and walks off. Back in Unova, it is around 8 o'clock in the morning and Ash sits in the Pokemon Center with Pikachu thinking about something. Ash, you look like you have something on your mind. Dawn asks. I do, Dawn, I'm thinking about Hunter J. Ash responds, worried she might try and snatch Zekrom. She asks. No, not that, I mean like who is she? Her past. How she became a Pokemon hunter. Those questions were never answered when she crashed. Ash explains. The million-dollar question is, how the hell did she survive a crash like the one you described? May asks, and Ash's face turns serious. I don't, May, but I'm gonna find out, Ash replies. How? It's not like you can just ask her. Max asks. You're right, I can't, but maybe one of henchmen can tell me next time I see on C1. I'll ask one, Ash says, inking that one her henchman could shed some light on Jay's past. Soon the group enters the lush pinwheel forest, which is filled with trees and vines, which goes on for miles and miles. All right for all. We know Hunter Jay is following us, so watch out for her and any of her guys, Ash says to the group, and they continue on into the beautiful forest. This place is beautiful, May says. It is of B. And here before, it's where I caught Lavani, Ash says and looks around the place, admiring the beauty of the place, and several Katoni flee by. Whoa, what are those Pokemon? Dawn asks, and she pulls out her Pokédex. Katoni, the cotton puff Pokemon. They go wherever the wind takes them. On rainy days, their bodies are heavier, so they take shelter beneath big trees. I'm catching one of those for S. Ewer, Ash says and pulls out a Pokeball intending on capturing the Cotton Puff Pokémon. Pikachu Thunder Wave, Ash says to Pikachu, who charges up electricity and is about to hit Katoni when it ducks from the jolt and charges up a ball of greenish-blue energy and fires at Pikachu, but he dodges. It's Energy Ball. Ash says, recognizing that move having seen it before. It was Powerful Energy Ball ALR. Ite, Max says, and Katoni unleashes a Razor Leaf attack on them, but Pikachu fires a Thunderbolt attack on Katoni, causing the Cotton Puff Pokémon to fall to the ground paralyzed. Now go Pokeball, Ash says, and throws the Pokeball at the paralyzed grass and fighting Pokémon, which opens and absorbs Katoni, then goes to the ground and wobbles and blinks several times, and it halts and sparkles. Fly off, confirming its capture, and shrinks down since Ash has 6 Pokémon on his team. I caught a Katoni, Ash says. Pika Pie. Pikachu says, happy at the capture of a new Pokémon, and he places it in his pocket, and soon Ash hears the sounds of tires in the distance. We're about to have company, Ash says, knowing that is probably Hunter J's men coming after them for Zekrom, most likely because she had witnessed Ash capturing the deep dark Pokémon and had lost interest in Purloin. Let's get out here fast, Ash says, and the go climb up into the trees to hide, and soon Hunter J's men come in in an armored vehicle, and one of them exits. Where have those kids gone? He asks himself, and from the tree Ash unleashes Zekrom from its Pokeball, and Ash gets on top of Zekrom along with the OT. Hers and go up into the sky and fly above Pinwheel Forest, and Jay's henchmen are completely oblivious to the whole thing. Let's just try and get out of here before Jay finds us, Ash says. Suddenly before Zekrom is a Salamence being ridden by none other than Hunter J. So it seems you made it out of that ship crash, okay. Don says, having contempt for the Pokemon Hunter. I'm lucky to be alive after T.M. Galactic betrayed me, but I had an escape capsule put there just for that kind of situation. Jay explains, and she readies her cannon. I've come for Zekrom, so if you're smart, get off now, she says. No way. I'm not letting you hurt another Pokemon, Ash says, and when Hunter J fires and Zekrom flies up dodging it, Zekrom used Dragon Breath, Ash says to the deep dark Pokémon, who charges up pale purple fire and unleashes it, but Salamence flies out of the way and fires a Dragon Pulse attack, but Zekrom dodges it as well. We've got to disappear somehow, Ash says, and Jay fires a beam from her cannon but miss. And Zekrom opens its mouth and a blue orb of energy appears and fires it at Salamence, causing damage. Whoa, that was Dragon Rage. Max says, Don, use Abra's teleport to get us out of here. Ash say, S to Don, but who knows where Abra will teleport us to. Don says, and Salamence unleashes a flamethrower attack which Zekrom dodges. Okay, I think that's a good idea, Don says, and unleashes Abra from its Pokeball. Abra used teleport. Don says, and Abra glows multicolored, and Zekrom and the gang teleports away, leaving Jay stunned and angry at the loss of her prey. Soon the gang riding Zekrom Ray. Pete pairs outside of Pinwheel Forest. Where are we now? Max asks, and Ash checks the location on his Pokegear. We're near Castelia City. Zekrom return, Ash says, recalling Zekrom to its Pokeball. That L80 is even worse in person than how you described her, Max says, concerning the Pokemon Hunter and her methods. We need to keep a low profile until we get out of Unova, then we'll be safe from J. Ash's AYS, and they continue walking up the road and stop to find a huge Pokemart. It's a Pokemart, May says, knowing what that place is. Good, we'll be able to stock up on supplies here. I'm almost out of Oak balls, Ash says. Let's just hope we don't run into you-know-who Pikachu, Ash says. Pika Pie, he says in agreement. Alright everyone, now if we go in and a girl with bushy purple asks you to come in over Kanaisu's booth instead of one that has a long line, just ignore her or walk away, Ash explains to the group, and they go into the Poke Mart to stock up on supplies. Back in Kanto at the Preso-N facility during the nighttime where Team Rocket is, they all lay on their beds in their cell, and someone knocks on their cell's doors, and it is a guard. Lights out Rockets, he says, and the lights go. Often they all smile with him gone, and the guard goes near Cassidy and Butch's cell to find it empty. What the hell? He asks, and is suddenly hit by a rolling kick attack which reveals to be Butch's Hitmontop, which he just recovered, and Butch uses a pair of keys and unlocks Jesse, James and Meowth's cell, and they exit it. I got to say, Meowth, it was smart to swipe the guard's key while he wasn't T looking, why didn't you think of it before? Butch asks, didn't think of it to be honest. Meowth replies while feeling a bit stupid for not thinking of that, and Cassidy comes in. Domino is outside WITHR getaway, she says, let's go, Butch says, and they exit the facility and get into the truck and drive off into the night. In Team Rocket HQ back in Kanto, Jesse, James, Meowth, Cassidy, Butch and Domino are now out of their prison uniforms and back in their black Team Rocket uniforms, and they stand before their leader Giovanni. Sir, they all say, I'm glad to see you all are out of prison and on your own, might I add. Giovanni comments on the success of their breakout. I already have an assignment for each of you, Giovanni says. What is it, sir? James asks first. Ash Ketchum hasn't been seen since he left Cassidy. Butch and Domino, for the police, our spies haven't seen him anywhere in the Kanto region, Giovanni explains. But recently we acquired this footage, Matori Giovanni's secreta. Rice says, and shows them footage of Abra using teleport and the gang being transported, so it looks like the head twerp has rounded up 3 of his companions from over the years, James says, and from T. He looks of it, sir, I'd say they got warped out of the region, Meowth says. It would seem, but none of the agents in Johto have seen them, Giovanni says. I've checked with our informants in Hoenn and Sinnoh, no sign of them as of now, Matori explains. Sir, if I may add, have you tried Unova? James asks his boss. No, actually, for all we know they could have been transported there, Giovanni says. Cassidy. Butch, I have your assignment here, Matori says, handing them a sealed envelope which they take, and a sir. Jesse asks Giovanni, and he hands them a sealed envelope as well. We shall carry out AR mission, sir, Meowth says, and Giovanni smiles evilly. Back in Unova, Ash and the gang begins looking through the Poke Mart for supplies and items. May then goes over to a counter and talks to a saleswoman. What are those? May asks. These are called gems. They can enhance the attacks of the type of the Pokemon you have wear at one gloriously wonderful time, she explains. I'll take the 3 each of the fire, electric, ice, water and dragon gems, Ash says, steeping in, and hands the saleswoman the money and takes the bag with the gems inside, and Ash walks off. Max soon spots a long line, which ends at a booth, so Ash, why are those people lined up exactly? Max asks. They're waiting in line up to see the Pokemon connoisseur here to check the compatibility between the trainer and their Pokemon. Ash explains, answering his question. What's a connoisseur? Max asks. Sillin is a Pokemon connoisseur, but the official name for a female connoisseur is Kanaisus. Check the trainer and Pokemon's compatibility and gives them advice. Ash explains. There are 4 ranks. First, they need to be evaluated by the Pokemon Connoisseur Association C class, B class, A class, and finally the highest rank S class, Ash explains. Whoa, that sounds awesome. Max, in order to do an evaluation you have to be an A- class or higher. There's just one Pokemon Kanaisus that might be here I do not want to run into. 2. Ash says. Pika Pie. Pikachu says in agreement, not wanting to run into the person he's talking about. So who is the person you don't want to run into anyway? Max asks. Her name's Burgundy. She's a Pokemon Kanaisus that me, Sillin, and Iris ran into a couple times during my journey here in Unova, Ash explains. Why, what's wrong with her? Dawn asks as she, Dawn and May step in. Well, she's, how do I put this, crazy, Ash says. What do you mean crazy? May asks. She wants revenge against Sillin because she challenged him to a battle at the Striation Gym, but she lost. To be honest, the reason for her revenge is pretty much blown out of proportion, Ash explains. How blown out of proportion? Max asks, wanting to hear this. She described what Sillin said to her like this, Ash says. In a fantasy it shows Burgundy cradling her defeated Oshawott in a spotlight and Sillin and his pansage surrounded by a purple aura and smiling evilly. Your Pokemon have been raised and stored in an unacceptable manner. And as a result they have a horrendous aroma most unbecoming. Now go wash your face and come back when you've learned your lesson, Sillin in the fantasy says, and then laughs manically. Only he didn't say any of those things, Ash says. You're right, she does sound crazy, Dawn says after hearing that. She then vowed to be a better connoisseur and she'd evaluate all Pokemon by aroma, and how by some miracle she got a connoisseur license, and when she went back to the gym to battle Sillin she found out he left already and she battled Chili instead and won, Ash explains. Ash, she's over there. Bianca says, spotting Burgundy walking around, and they leave, getting out of her line of sight, and they hide in the medicine department. Oh good, she didn't see us. Ash says, what do you think she would have done if she saw us? Max asks. She would have wanted to evaluate our Pokemon and would have just picked holes in them. Ash replies, and Ash looks both ways to see if Burgundy was anywhere in sight. Okay, she's not there. I'm going to go stock up on Pokeballs. I've only got 4 left in my bag, Ash says, and he goes over to the Pokeball department. I'll take 10 Pokeballs, 12 Ultra Balls, 6 Dusk Balls and a couple Repeat Balls please, Ash says to the cashier, who hands him the Pokeballs, and he pays him, and Ash walks off only to bump into someone, revealing it to be Burgundy. Oh, Burgundy. I didn't expect you to be here, Ash says nervously. Pika Pie, Pikachu says nervously, alright, I want to know. Burgundy says, know what? Ash asks, I heard rumors that you chased Summit Hing all the way out into Pinwheel Forest. What was it? Burgundy asks. I don't want her to find out about Zekrom. I can imagine what would happen if she evaluated it and she insulted it, Ash says to himself in his mind. Zekrom has the aroma of an old power plant that hasn't been cleaned in years. I don't have to evaluate it too. Before Burgundy in the fantasy could continue, Zekrom unleashes a draw Gone Breath attack, and soon Burgundy, whose face is wrapped in bandages, is placed on a gurney and placed in an ambulance by paramedics, which turns on its lights and drives off. Nothing. I wasn't following anything, Ash says, making Burgundy even more suspicious. You're hiding something from me, Ash, I know it, she says as he walks away from the purple-haired Pokemon Kanisus, who gives him a look of frustration as he leaves. Soon the group exits the Pokemart, having stocked up on supplies. Burgundy heard that I was following the Dark Stone into Pinwheel Forest. If she found out I had Zekrom's, he would have evaluated it, insulted it, and well, she would probably need skin grafts, Ash says to the gang. Pika Pie, Pikachu says in agreement, and the gang begins to walk away from the Pokemart down the road. Somewhere back in Kanto, the Team Rocket trio consisting of Jesse, James and Meowth along with James's Mime Jr. stand before a video feed of Giovanni. The first part in your mission is to travel to Saffron City. There, Pierce will brief you the rest, Giovanni explains. Sir, they say together, and the feed ends. So Pierce is on his way. This should be interesting, James says. I want to find the twerp and scratch him to death for throwing us in that pit with the rapists and the murderers, Meowth says, angry at the 3 months they spent locked up in prison. For now we should be happy. We don't blast off anymore. That gag was getting old, Jesse says. You said it, James says. Mime Jr. replies. For now we just do as the boss says and go to Saffron City and meet with Pierce. And don't get caught and stay out of the authorities' sight, James says. Back in Unova, Ash and the gang decide to spend the night at the local Pokemon Center, and Ash turns on laptop and checks the local news and finds an article. Oh no, Ash says, what's wrong? Don asks. Look, Ash says, and turns to show them an online article with the headline, Team Rocket members escaped. They're out. How'd they get free? Max asks. It says here it appears they used the keys stolen from a guard to unlock their cells and escaped with a stolen garbage truck, Ash explains, reading the article. Alright, Team Rocket is out of jail, but they won't be stupid enough to go out in the open and risk getting caught, May says. If they're free, so when we get back to Kanto we need to keep our eyes out, and we can't fall for their disguises anymore. I swear it's like we can see it's them from space, yet we can't even realize it's them, Ash says, remembering all the times they'd fall for their disguises over the Yay. You're right, it's so obvious sometimes, but we still fall for it, Max says. Meanwhile, outside something lurks in the shadows watching Ash and the gang, and then a pink flash appears, and from the shadow a Pidove emerges and flies off. Back inside, May and Dawn walk down the Pokemon Center holding hands, and they sit down in a room where no one else is. Then they put their hands on each other's faces and lock lips with each other in pure passion, and they sit down on the couch and begin to make out. Soon the two begin to moan in each other's mouth in passion, enjoying the tastes of each other's THS, May, this feels so great, Dawn says, looking into her girlfriend's beautiful blue eyes with her own blue eyes, and continues to kiss the brunette with passion, and suddenly May spots something and he looks to see Max, who just entered the room, who looks back at his older sister with a surprised look. May, Dawn, I'm sorry, Max says when May grabs him by his shirt collar. Hold it right there, were you peeping on us? May asks her little brother thinking he was watching them make out, and no. No, I swear May. Max says not wanting his sister to get angrier with him. Are you telling the truth young man? May asks in an angry tone. No I wasn't May, Max says. Max you should knock first before entering a room. Dawn says to her girlfriend's younger brother not wanting him to do this again. I'm sorry but were you girls ever going to tell me and Ash about this? Max asks them who look at each other with concern. We weren't sure how to tell you guys. Dawn says, we're not even sure how we're going to tell Mom. Dad and Dawn's mom, May says still thinking how the two are going to come out of the closet to not only Ash but their parents. The next morning the group makes their way across the S.K. Yarrow Bridge and enters Castelia City, the city where Ash won his third Unova gym badge after defeating the city's gym leader Burra. Welcome to Castelia City guys, Ash says, let's go then I want to what's in here? Dawn says excited to see what's in the city and the gang goes into the city and unknown to them Burgundy is following them. At a stand Ash and the gang purchase some Casteliacone, SA or Casteliacones they're a popular ice cream here in Castelia. Ash explains to the group, I can see why we waited in line for 20 minutes to get this stuff but it's so good it was worth the wait. May says licking the cone with joy. From a rooftop the P-Dove from last night watches the group carefully having followed them from the town just a mile away and then flies off but intends to keep an eye on them still. Pikachu then looks up and notices this, Pikachu asks and P-Dove then flies away from them and Pikachu simply shrugs it off and the group continues on while still being followed by the P-Dove. In city's central plaza Ash sits down on a bench and eats the rest of his Casteliacone and looks up to see the P-Dove who was following them looking down at him and Pikachu, it feels like he's watching us doesn't it buddy? Ash asks Pikachu, Pika Pie, Pikachu responds. The P-Dove then flies down to where Ash is and looks at him and then the P-Dove is surrounded by pink energy and D then changes its form into a Pikachu before Ash and Pikachu's very eyes, what the? Ash asks, Pika Pie. Pikachu asks after seeing this. The Pikachu then does this again and reveals its true form to be a Zorua, it's a Zorua. Ash says having seen this Pokemon before, Pikachu says and the tricky fox Pokemon then scratches its ear and suddenly is scooped up by Bianca who embraces it. Oh, look at you, you are just the cutest. She says cuddling the tricky fox Pokemon is desperately trying to escape her hold, it's a Zorua. Dawn says remembering her encounter with one back in Sinnoh. May pulls out her Pokédex curious about this one. Zorua the tricky fox Pokemon. To protect themselves from danger, they hide their true identities by transforming into people and Pokemon. That's an interesting Pokemon for sure. Max says, so it can transform like a Ditto. May asks, no it's a lot different you see the way Zorua transforms is through its special ability which is called Illusion S. Oh unlike the move transform it's merely an illusion allowing Zorua to keep its own type and moves, Ash explains having seen the abilities of Zorua in the past. Zorua then notices an Officer Jenny Paw sing through and then uses its illusion ability and becomes Pikachu and perches itself on the opposite side of Ash's shoulder, Pikachu asks wondering why Zorua did that and when the officer is out of sight Zorua sheds its disguise. I wonder why Zorua did that it's as if it wanted to hide from that Officer Jenny, Ash says, it was hiding from here, a voice calls out and they turn around to a boy who looks to be around Ash's age with teal hair a black leather jacket and blue jeans, why? Ash asks the stranger. From what I hear that Zorua is a bit of a troublemaker they're looking for. Are it all over the city, he explains to the group, I'd have Zorua stay in disguise if I were you Ash. He says to Ash and Zorua takes his advice and transforms into Pikachu again and stays on Ash's shoulder. How do you know me? Ash asks, know your name I've heard of you I saw you on TV when your Charizard didn't battle which cost you that battle at the Indigo Plateau, he explains, that's behind me. Now Charizard listens to me more now, Ash says as Charizard became more loyal after Ash saved his life back at the Orange Archipelago. Name's Anthony, I'm from Kanto myself, he says introducing and telling the group he is from the Kanto region. We got sent here when my Abra teleported us out of the region we were aiming for Saffron City, Dawn explains to their new acquaintance. That can happen. And sometimes with teleport depending on how young the Pokemon who uses it is, Anthony says having obviously studied the move and its properties, so back to Zorua, do you know anything else like why the police are after it? Ash asks. I heard it's because Zorua has been causing trouble all across town, but heard that's not the complete story. Anthony explains to the group, if you don't want to Zorua to be caught, I'd recommend having it stay in disguise until you get out of the city, Anthony explains. Zorua then follows the newcomer's advice and transforms to Pikachu again. Thanks. So does this mean you're not telling anyone about Zorua? Ash asks. I don't have a nice history with Officer Jenny, and no, I don't have a criminal record, he says, thinking what they might ask. I'll take that as a no. I am not telling anyone, Dawn says. Let's just enjoy Castelia City for now, May says, and grabs her girlfriend by the hand and pulls her off. I'll take your advice, thank you, Ash says to Anthony. Don't me. Ntion it, I don't like little Pokemon being hunted, he says. The group soon enters the Cafe Sonata and sit down in the chairs. The music that's playing sounds beautiful, I've never heard anything like it, May says, commenting on the music which is playing. I've heard them talk about a Pokemon called Melota. Who is that? Dawn asks. I'll show you, Ash says, and looks up Melota with his Pokédex and shows them. Melota, the melody Pokemon. Its melodies are sung with a special vocalization method that can control the feelings of those who hear it. Many famous songs have been inspired by the melodies that Melota plays. Whoa, that sounds amazing, May says after hearing the Pokédex data. You see, Melota once played a song and danced to it. It filled people's hearts with joy. However, when sorrow darkened the world, Melota lost the melody. At the same time, its red shoes were lost somewhere, he explains, remembering the legend of Melota. Red shoes. May asks, curious of what he meant. Melota has two forms, its Aria form you saw in the Pokédex, which makes it a normal and psychic type. In that form it can sing beautifully, and its Pirouette form, which makes it a normal and fighting, it dances gracefully, Ash explains. So by shoes you mean it couldn't switch into Pirouette form, right? Max asks. Exactly, Ash says, telling the young trainer he is correct. It sounds like a very interesting Pokemon. Dawn comments, thinking Melota sounds interesting for what it can do. So Ash, how can you tell which one is Pikachu and the other is Zorua? Max asks quietly, not wanting anyone to hear them. Pikachu is the one on my right shoulder, Zorua is on my left, Ash says. Did you just say Zorua? An Officer Jenny asks who is sitting in the table next to them. I said I've heard of a Zoru in this town, Ash says, trying not to look suspicious. Alright then, we've just been searching for one, Jenny says, and exits the cafe. Oh, thank Arceus, that was close, Ash says. You said I think we should just leave the city now while we still can, Bianca suggests. That's actually sounds like a pretty good idea, May says, agreeing with Bubbly Blonde's suggestion, and Ash along with group finishes IR drinks and leaves the money on the counter and exits the cafe. Soon the group along with Pikachu and Zorua exit the cafe. Alright, the city exit into Route 4 isn't that far away according to the Oak Gear. If we walk we can get there in no time, Ash says, and Zorua in its Pikachu form gets off of Ash's shoulder and begins walking casually with the group and slips in a puddle of water and sheds T's disguise and catches the attention of Officer Jenny. There you are, she says, and Ash quickly pulls out a Pokeball and enlarges it and throws in the air, and while Officer Jenny goes to pick up Zorua, a loud roar is heard and she turns around to see Zekrom floating above her. Zekrom, she yells out, and from a distance Burgundy just notices this and looks to see the deep dark Pokemon. Zekrom, she asks in surprise of the sight of the legendary dragon Pokemon of Ideals, and Zekrom roars again and Zorua jumps to the top of Zekrom's head and the deep dark Pokemon flies off. Well, my Sergeant WILL want to hear this, Jenny says, as the Pokemon her and the Force were searching for escapes on top of Zekrom. Got to hand to Zekrom, he sure can pull off a fast rescue, Max says, and the deep dark Pokemon perches itself at the top of a building and roars once again. Hey look, it's Zekrom, a citizen says, pointing at the legendary Pokemon perched on the top of the building. Amazing, another says. ND takes a picture of the deep dark Pokemon along with several others. Listen, whatever trouble Zorua has been causing, it's no reason to be chasing after it, Ash says to the Officer Jenny. It's not the reason I was chasing it, I was trying to get it away from the Pokemon that was chasing after it, Jenny says. What Pokemon? Ash asks, and suddenly a Drillbur burrows up from the ground looking very angry. A Drillbur, that's what you're trying to keep Zorua away from? Ash asks Officer Jenny, thinking the mole Pokemon isn't much of a threat. It's not just the Drillbur, Jenny says, scared, and suddenly our Excadrills come up from the ground looking just as angry. Oh, I see, Ash says, realizing what he is up against now. Whoa, look at those Pokemon. Max says, and both May and Dawn pull out their Pokédex, curious about both Pokemon. Drillbur, the mole Pokemon. It makes its way swiftly through the soil by putting both claws together and rotating at high speed. Excadrill, the subterrane Pokemon and the evolved form of Drillbur. More than 300 feet below the surface, they build maze-like nests. Their activity can be destructive to subway tunnels. Why are they after Zorua? Ash asks Officer Jenny. I do. Intino, that's what I've been trying to find out, she replies. An Excadrill charges up a green energy ball and fires at Ash, only for him to move out of the way. That was hidden power. Ash says, Meganium sleep powder. Ash says, throwing her Pokeball into the air, unleashing her and the herb Pokemon, and she fires a cloud of green air, but the ground Pokemon use Dig, avoiding the attack. You just made them angrier, Jenny says, even more scared, and soon they feel the ground shake. They're using Earthquake down there. Max says, I've got an idea. Meganium use sleep powder in the holes where they dug under. Ash says, and the herb Pokemon unleashes a sleep powder attack in the holes and the earthquake stops. They'll wake up soon. That won't stop them forever, Jenny says. The big question is why. Are they trying to attack Zorua? When did this all start? Ash asks, curious why the Excadrills and the Drillbur were trying to attack Zorua. Well, it started a few weeks ago, Jenny explains. Zorua has been around for a while, and it tricking people around town is something that we've learned to live with, and we've pretty much ignored it, but recently a family of Excadrill have started coming after Zorua. I tried to help it, but it thought I was trying to lock it away, so it ran, Jenny explains. So that's why it was so scared, Ash says. We better find out why they're trying to get Zorua, and fast, before the wreck half the city, Jenny says. The first step to finding out is by finding those guys, Anthony says, stepping in. I don't think we'll be able to dig a hole into the ground before they wake up. And Thony, Ash says, estimating it will take time to get the proper equipment to dig hole in the street and secure the ground Pokemon before the effects of sleep powder were off. I've got an alternative method of getting down there, Anthony says, having a faster method of getting to the Excadrill and Drillbur, and then pulls out a Pokeball and throws it out, and the Pokemon that is unleashed is a Sandslash. The mouse Pokemon says, after being unleashed, Sandslash use Dig to make a bigger hole, and Ash have Meganium drag those things up to the surface using Vine Whip while they're still asleep. Anthony explains, revealing this is his method of bringing them out of the dirt, and Sandslash does as its trainer commands and begins to dig a hole, and Bianca pulls out her Pokédex, curious about this Pokemon. Sandslash, the mouse Pokemon and the evolved form of Sandshrew. It curls up, and then rolls into foes with its back. Its sharp spines inflict severe damage. Sandslash sort of looks like Excadrill, to be honest, Bianca says, thinking the two Pokemon look somewhat alike. You could say Sandslash is like the Kanto version of Excadrill, Ash says, and soon Sandslash emerges, having dug a hole deep enough. Alright, Meganium use Vine Whip and drag these guys up, Ash says to the herb Pokemon, and two green vines come out of the flower on her neck and go down in the hole and begins to remove the Excadrill, starting with Drillbur. After that, Meganium goes to pick up one of the Excadrill, but before she can bring it back up, its eyes open. It's awake. Jenny says, seeing it opens its eyes and it breaks free of Meganium's gift, and it and the other Excadrill wake up as well and jump on top while Drillbur continues to sleep. Meganium sleep powder again, Ash says to the herb Pokemon, unleashes an other sleep powder attack, but the Excadrill dig underground before it can hit, and it hits Bianca instead, causing her to fall to the ground asleep. Let's just be happy Drillbur is still asleep though, Axe says, and growling can be heard, and they look to see the mole Pokemon standing awake and angry at them, ready to fight. Meganium use Razor Leaf, Ash says, and Meganium sends off an array of leaves at the mole Pokemon, which hits it, causing significant damage to the mole Pokemon, and it falls to the ground nearly fainted, but gets up, Barley standing still ready to fight. Meganium sleeping powder. Shish says to the herb Pokemon, who unleashes green powder on the mole Pokemon, causing it to fall to sleep once again. Now go Pokeball, Ash says and throws the Pokeball on top of Drillbur, which absorbs the mole Pokemon into the Pokeball, and it falls to the ground and then wobbles several times, then halts and sparkles fly off of it, confirming its capture, and shrinks due to Ash having 6 Pokemon on his team. Now maybe we can find out why they're after Zorua, Ash says, and suddenly the ground shakes once more. They're using another earthquake attack. Max says, Meganium use sleep powder. Ash says to the herb Pokemon, who unleashes more green dust into the hole, which knocks the Excadrill out cold, causing the earthquakes to halt. Alright, we can't keep this up forever, we have to get these things out of the ground fast, Jenny says, knowing they can't keep doing this forever, so let's try and get someone they know to get them to calm down, Ash suggests. Ash then exits the Pokemon Center. Having sent over Electabuzz to make room for Drillbur, goes towards the hole where the Excadrill currently are and unleashes the mole Pokemon from its Pokeball. Alright Drillbur, I need you to go down here and tell the Excadrill down there to stop making earthquakes and show us why they're trying to get Zorua, Ash says to his newly captured Pokemon, who then jumps down the hole. With any luck Drillbur will convince them to give us an answer, Ash says, guessing Drillbur will be able to calm its family down, but suddenly Drillbur is thrown straight out of the hole and hits the ground head first, with T-doves flying around its disoriented head. I have been wrong before though, Ash says, knowing this to be true. Okay, they don't appear to be willing to talk even to a member of their own family who are the willing to talk to. Ash asks, trying to figure something else out. Well, we need to find some way to calm these Excadrill before they wreck the entire city, Jenny says, knowing this to be true. We can't hand Zorua over to them, just remember that, officer, Anthony says to Officer Jenny in a rough tone. I wasn't even going to suggest that, young man, Jenny says, not really liking his tone, and soon the Excadrill exit the hole looking less but still angry. Alright, let's try and be civilized here, give us some sort of way to tell us why you're after Zorua, Ash says to the Excadrills, who look at each other, apparently talking about this among themselves. What do you think they're saying? Dawn asks. Piplup asks, also confused. I think they're talking about if they should just talk is out with us, Ash says, guessing by the way they are speaking in Pokemon language. The Excadrills finish their conversation with each other and turn to Ash and the gang. So what's your answer? Ash asks the subterrane Pokemon, who then simply smirk at Ash and the group, and then they begin to fire multiple hidden power attacks at them, which they jump out of the way of before they hit. Looks like they're not taking your offer, Ash, Anthony says, as the Excadrill continue their attack on them, and Meganium uses a Razor Leaf attack on them, which doesn't seem to do that much due to them being Steel and ground-type Pokemon, and one of them respond by using a Drill Run attack on Meganium, knocking her around the street. This is getting out of hand, we need to stop them before they do any more damage. Jenny says, not wanting the Excadrill to cause more collateral damage, and Zekrom hears this and Ash gives him the do it signal, and the deep dark Pokemon unleashes a pale purple flame upon the EXC. A drill, causing significant damage to them, and when the smoke clears shows all 4 of the Excadrill fainted. Whoa, Zekrom's Dragon Breath really packs a punch, Anthony says after seeing the way one Saint of Zekrom's Dragon Breath was able to take down 4 Excadrill at once. Alright, let's try and find out why they're so mad at Zorua, Anthony says, thinking this is the best time to find out, and pulls out a Pokeball and unleashes a Solrock. Solrock, it says after being unleashed, and Bianca pulls out her Pokédex, curious about this unfamiliar Pokemon. Solrock, the meteorite Pokemon. A new Pokemon species, rumored to be from the sun. It gives off light while spinning. Solrock, can you read the Excadrill's minds and find out why they're so hostile towards Zorua? Anthony asks the meteorite Pokemo. Whose eyes glow, and soon the Excadrill are surrounded by energy veil, and soon the Solrock turns to Anthony, whose eyes glow as well, and the glow stops. I just found out the reason they're after Zorua. Anthony says, having had Solrock read their minds and show him what the meteorite Pokemon, so why are they so angry? Ash asks, curious what the reason for the subterrane Pokemon's hostility towards Zorua is. Well, apparently, Anthony says, Zorua was using its illusion ability to trick these guys out of their food, and as you can see they didn't take it so well. Anthony explains, recounted what Solrock had shown him from the Excadrill's thoughts. Well, they are pretty temperamental when it comes to someone stealing their food, Dawn says. Alright, I think I have an idea which will make these guys leave Zorua alone, Ash says. How? Jenny asks. I'm going to catch Zorua, Ash says, and Zorua hears this and jumps down in front of him, evidently accepting his challenge for battle. I want to make this far, so Drillbur, you're up, Ash says to the recently captured mole Pokemon who is out of its Pokeball already. Drillbur use Fury swipes. Ash says to the mole Pokemon whose claws glow white and it runs over to Zorua and begins to repeatedly slash the tricky fox Pokemon, who then responds with a Shadow Ball, which does a considerable amount of damage to Drillbur. Whoa, the Shadow Ball was impressive, Ash says, impressed by the level of power in Zorua's Shadow Ball attack. Think a move Drillbur has which should be strong against a dark type, Ash says to himself in his thoughts, and he remembers a move he learned Drillbur has, use Brick Break. Ash says to Drillbur, whose hand turns white and then punches Zorua with it and sends the tricky fox Pokemon flying and then faints due to the super effectiveness of the Brick Break. Now go Poke Ball, Ash says, and throws an empty Poke Ball at the tricky fox Pokemon, which absorbs it and then wobbles around several times and then halts and sparkles fly off, confirming its capture, and shrinks down due to Ash having 6 Pokemon on his team already. Alright, we've got the Zorua matter cleaned up, what about them? Anthony asks, pointing to the Exotter. Who are currently being treated by Otano, who have just arrived and are now conscious but too weak to fight. Listen, Zorua is my Pokemon now, so if you want to get to Zorua you'll have to get through me. Got that? Ash says to them, who just glare at him as they are getting medical treatment. I think it's time for us to go, guys, Ash says to his friends, and they nod in agreement, and Zekrom then jumps off the building it was perched onto and then follows Ash while him and the group exit Castelia through Route 4 while still being followed unknowingly by Burgundy once again. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you all are enjoyed this video. If you do, please leave a like, share and subscribe. Also don't forget to support author of this fanfic. So let's end this video here. Until then, see you in next video.